we are up, Our Town Podcast, and I was thinking about this. I say the word excited, and you're going to watch a lot of podcasts and a lot of TV shows, and sometimes it comes across as rote, like, oh, we're so excited today. We're so excited. And I'll sit there and be critical, like, well, can you find another word? Are you really excited? But it's kind of true. Like, and it'll make sense when we introduce Clay Coleman here, from many things. But it's exciting. And I was just telling Clay before coming on the air that I get so into researching every guest that I'm confident that you and I could probably talk 5, 6, 7 hours. Right. And we may still not get to everything that we want to get to. But today, joining me is Clay Coleman and a.k.a. FreakDaddy from the Havoc. So we'll switch over. And it's good to have this setup back. My last episode 47 with the Travel Hacking Bros, Alex and Darren White, was the first time I actually had 2 guests, and I had to change all the cameras around in order to accommodate that. So I'm breathing a little easier today. It's kind of like going back to like your setup, right? So we have the studio camera back, and let's go ahead before he leaves us. But we got a special guest in the studio, and I'm going to use this camera, and I will tell you it's kind of a poo-poo camera, but there he is. There's Joseph. Hello. And he is a student at UAH, and they're going to start a podcast over there. And I said, hey, Joseph, come on over. Well, he asked, hey, can I come and watch? And absolutely. And so he came in here, and we've been talking about the setup, and giving him some ideas. He's taking some notes, and he's going to take it back to campus.
Absolutely.
So I think you would agree with me, Clay, that it's all about giving back.
Absolutely. So
this is Clay Coleman. That is your given name?
Yes.
And
by birth. FreakDaddy was not the birth given name.
And
even though it'd be cool, I'd like to have a credit card. Maybe there'd be FreakDaddy on it, but it doesn't work out that way.
Your middle name is Sanders?
Sanders. That's my mother's maiden name.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. And
you've been in Huntsville a while. You have 2 boys, and there's a couple ways that I didn't meet you formally till recently. Our boys are on the same wrestling team at James Clemens High School, and if anybody, I would encourage you to go follow Clay on Facebook, and there's a lot of great pictures. You're really good at posting, and you're really good at highlighting T-Bone, as you call him.
There you go.
His accomplishments in wrestling. Do you feel like you are just some portion of that?
No. I mean, I enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
I think I've had more fun now that my kids are at the point to where they're active and really involved, and things are clicking on all cylinders, where I remember, like, not to live vicariously through your kids, but I just was like, God, I wish I lived in what they're living in.
Yeah.
Because the town I grew up in was a small town in Kentucky, and we didn't have any of this. Now, granted, a lot of that was just the technology. I remember the first computers we had, so there wasn't, YouTube, there wasn't the, social media, any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So to be in with their time and now getting to kind of participate, whether helping them on social media or coming up with videos that we can play that kind of recap the kids, because I would die. Like the videos I've had to go get like an old TV with the VCR and to be able to put the tapes in to watch something, and you're just praying that the tape just doesn't mess up, and to be able to do that now, I think it's just an exciting time. But yeah, it's fun. I've had a good time really kind of getting plugged into that.
So let me just do a quick overview intro, but I don't want to dwell on it because we're going to come back to all of the elements of the intro. Mm-hmm. But then I want to key on something we're talking about as it relates to sports and teams. But you've had a radio career. You've been working with the Havoc for 17 years on the ice, and also you had a VP role. And Clay's very involved in the community. You work for Simple Helix now, and then on the work side, I work for Mantech. I got a tour of the data center that you all have, if you will, for lack of I think that actually doesn't do it justice, but it's quite impressive. 9 nines availability, right, in the hybrid cloud, basically the infrastructure that you've all have put in at your campus over there.
Yeah.
And so just an active in the community.
I've had to evolve. For me, I think that was went to school, wanted to play football. Went to, that didn't work out. Then I was a huge fan of radio growing up as a kid, and then do that and then get into radio. And then as the radio career, not just me personally, I maybe have not have been, I was kind of the jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So I didn't probably peak as much. Phoenix, Arizona was like the biggest that I ever peaked. But as I started getting a family, it was like, okay, I got to be an adult.
Yeah.
Like this $28,000 a year job and bouncing from city to city to city just doesn't fly anymore.
Yeah.
So I had to like grow up. Well, when you got the broadcast marketing degree from a Western Kentucky University, you're not very marketable, so you had to kind of figure out sales and do this and plug yourself in the community here and get these things. So it's just been this, like a potpourri of everything that's kind of compiled into one, playing off. In no way, shape, form, or fashion do I look at myself as a celebrity, but from the hockey side, the radio side, in a local market like Huntsville, you can be that way. So, I mean, I'm playing that as much as I can. Oh, do you know me? I'm the hockey guy. Yeah. My ego is not there. I have no ego. But will I use that to get into, oh, man, you're the guy from the Havoc.
Right.
Sure. Absolutely. So it's been, like I said, it just had to evolve where, the money just wasn't there. People are like, oh, why'd you get out of radio? Well,
is there even like a middle class when it comes to radio and TV? It's almost either you're an intern or you're not being paid enough, or then there's the mega rich that are working on the big channels and the big networks and syndicates. It almost seems like there's no middle class.
It's there. You just got to decide, can you stay there?
Yeah.
Because there's that intern, they don't give you a shot. You're working, getting coffee for the host or whoever that is. And then maybe you're good at social media. You do that. Then there's that person that probably can live off, the $30,000 a year. Usually sometimes they would trade out an apartment. So you had different expenses that you didn't have to pay, but you had to say, is that what I want to do?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I hit.
Yeah.
It was just a situation where I had to hustle so much.
I guess shouldn't have characterized it that way but there are only so many jobs in a market.
Correct.
That could pay you
absolutely.
to
for
have
sure.
a decent living, right? And middle class.
Right.
And I guess that's just it. It's just the supply is so low.
Yeah. And the evolution of technology, where technology's kind of killed, I like technology, but there's sometimes where I'm like, I don't want that to happen. Whether it's, in some markets they can do where somebody literally, and we can go, into this for the radio side, is that you would have your own show. Let's say you're in Huntsville, Alabama, and you're making $30,000 a year. You're the midday host.
Mm-hmm.
But then your company is under Cumulus or iHeartRadio or one of the big ones. Well, they put into it saying, hey, people don't really care in some cities whether or not they're local or not. So they would take one person, put them in. I'm burning myself as far as the radio community goes. But they'd put one person in New York that was the classic rock guy.
Yeah.
He would do one show, 50, 60 markets. So now that $30,000 a year job is gone.
Yeah.
This one guy gets paid $100,000 where he's really saving them thousands and thousands of dollars. And you, as just a generic listener, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I can hear it. Like when I listen to him, I get mad about it. I'm like, oh man, I hate that. I wish, because you'll hear the guy talking and then you'll hear where he'll just do like a local drop going, you're listening to Classic Rock 106.1 WTAK. That's recorded.
Right.
He said that
and
6 months ago.
For all the other markets too.
Right. Every market's doing it. So yeah, that was the thing that frustrated me, because it was like, I get it. It was a business.
Mm-hmm.
That was a business decision. Yeah, absolutely makes sense. But it really kills the vibe of where I fell in love with radio. And I came from a fan and a listener to eventually get to do it.
Yeah.
And then when it changed, where it was like, hey, you're kind of forgetting that fan, or you're forgetting that individual that's giving you 30 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour to listen to your show.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of cheating them in a sense. And it bothered me a little bit. Plus, like I said, the money thing was big. I couldn't afford to get to where I wanted to be and my family, to take care of them, to plan for the future for college and things like that if I stayed.
Yeah. So you got a broadcast marketing degree at Western Kentucky.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen those put together. I've heard of, kind of the broadcasting route, the marketing route, but what was that experience like? Were they kind of packaging together the two things, where they were trying to be part of the business school so that you could kind of go and run a station, but as also be like a on-air personality?
Yeah. So when I was in college, my professor that I had that I liked, you got to go in, multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually care when I worked for Dave Ramsey used to say, your worth is somebody what they can replace you for, which I thought was such a great tagline. And I've kind of used that as a personal mantra for me. But hey, I'm the radio guy. I can talk, but I'm also sales facing, where I understand the marketing side of it and endorsements and all those kind of things. So it kind of, our professor felt like it gave you more of a punch, and you're more marketable in the sense of, hey, I'm not just somebody that's going to, oh man, I'm not going to talk to clients, or I don't know how to talk to a business about how I can make their commercial that we just did or their remote or whatever we're doing successful. It was, now I realize where my bread's buttered. I need the money. And it honestly, towards the latter part of my career with the radio stations, that was the only thing that was keeping me alive, because I would go in, I'd sell myself. I didn't really care about the radio station. I would go into a radio show and try to get $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month that were coming in just because they liked me.
Right.
So I was like, we can't really let this guy go, because he's got people, he's got money that's tied to him, So that was where it was, as far as that, like I said, a professor that just probably saw the writing on the wall of, if you're just a guy that comes in or a girl that comes in and just does your radio show, you're not very valuable.
Yeah.
Because they can find that person in any city to do that.
Here's a great story that I heard from, his name's John. I can't remember his last name, but he founded Spartan, the Spartan race series. And then later they bought Tough Mudder. I think he was interviewed on Rogan and told these stories of kind of how that came to be. But when he was 12, so his dad wasn't in the picture. I can't remember if his dad died or there was a divorce. Lived in Long Island with his mom, and basically they had, in their neighborhood, there was a lot of people tied to the mob, including his neighbor. And so his neighbor was trying to help look out for the kid and help him earn some money and get some experience. And I guess his mom and the neighbor were talking about that, what could he do? And he said, well, why don't you have him come clean my pool? And so she said, okay, I'll pay him to clean my pool. And so he shows up to talk to his neighbor, and he said, there's 3 things that you need to learn. Number 1, always be on time, right? Never be late. If I say be here at 8 o'clock, you be here at 8 o'clock, that type of lesson. Number 2, don't ever ask for money. Like, I'll tell you right away what you're going to pay, and I'll pay you, when you kind of earn it, right? And I will pay you, but don't ask me and badger me, about being paid. We have our terms, and I'll stick to the terms, and don't remind me. I know what I owe you. And then the third thing he said was, and this is the most important, comes back to the point you were just making, is make yourself like irreplaceable. Make it so that when I come home, even though I asked you to only clean my pool, why don't you look around, and if weeds need to be pulled, pull some weeds. If the deck chairs need to be straightened out, do that. If there's something, the garden hose happened to be out, roll it up, coil it, so that when I come home, I realize, oh my gosh, I can't do without this kid.
Yeah.
And that turned into, by the time he was done with high school, he had like 1,500 customers. He had built up a business, a pool cleaning business, and other things. And that's what really propelled him to start the Spartan thing kind of later in life. And he just always went back to those principles that he taught him. But like you were saying, make it so that your boss can't do without you.
Because you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I've had several people that I've worked for where maybe I've done something stupid, or they're like, oh, and they've literally said, hey, we're ready to fire you. But then we're like, if we fire you, we're firing 3 positions.
Yeah.
So we're going to give you a stern talking to, we're going to, come after you a little bit. But then at the end of the day, we can't afford to lose you. And I think I tell my kids that. I'm like, look, you need to be just, sticky.
Mm-hmm.
To where literally if they go to pull you out of there, it's pulling from all different areas. I tell them, in school, hey, having trouble with the class, be all over that teacher. The first time you mess up, go to them. Mm-hmm. Don't be begging for handouts. Don't be begging for extra credit, but go in there and be like, hey, I messed up. What can I do? Mm-hmm. How can I be, hey, is there anything else that's going, I said,
take ownership.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then when they're like, they're rooting for you, they kind of get to that point of like, this kid's pretty good kid. So I don't really want to take his head off. But yeah, I think that's That's a huge. That's I really honestly. If the secrets of Freak Daddy, I think that's been where I have went in. I've known where my weaknesses were. I know where I wasn't as good at certain things, but as far as a people person or just genuinely just caring, yeah, I'm going to beat you every time because I just it's just the way I was wired, the DNA of my family, and things like that, and people that I've had mentors that have taught me, like Dave Ramsey, or just my dad.
Yeah.
Different things that he would teach me that were just, my dad had an 8th grade education. He was a military guy, but he worked at Ford Motor Company in Louisville, Kentucky as a welding inspector for 32 years.
Wow.
And he would just say, hey, I don't want you to have to go through what I've had to go through. And he would give me these little, and I hear it, and my kids are like, was that another one from Pawpaw? Because I'm like, these are just little nuggets that he gave me. And I'm like you talked about him giving back, of just saying, hey, I was always told you want to get somebody that is above you. You probably heard this before. A lot of the John Maxwells and Zig Ziglars and all these individuals are the motivational guys. Get somebody that's above you that you can learn from. Get somebody that's a peer that you're on the same level, and then find somebody below you to pass it down. I mean, I think that's just a great way to keep moving things and get things going.
You must have anticipated I was gonna ask you this question. So let's just you've teed it up for me. But let's go back to Western Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And that was essentially what I was going to ask you is, did you learn these lessons from your dad? Was it from other mentors? And then kind of talk me through those life lessons and who cemented those in your mind, as a young man.
Yeah, I would say there was father figure. My dad was a very simple man, but he had some complex stuff. Like one of the things that he told me was, the last thing that someone asks you is what they really wanted. So if I came to you and said, hey, Troy,
they're beating around the bush.
How's your kids? Yeah. How's your wife? Yeah. How's your job doing? Hey, buddy, can you give me $20? Right. I mean, so it was always, and I got to where I would watch people and I'd say, man, look at this. So it's a personal thing to me. If I need to ask you something, I'm not beating around the bush. It'll come out. Hey, Troy, I need $50. How's your wife doing? How's Jason doing? How's his shoulder? I mean, then it's not really that I'm not genuine that way, but I think it helps me be more genuine, but that was one lesson that I was always big with him. That was just, here's a guy, 8th grade education, country boy, how did he pick up on that? How did he know? But like I said, I think people feel a little bit different. Yeah. Cause I look at people now that when it comes to that point and they've literally hit me, hey, how's your mom doing? Hey, how's T-Bone doing? All these things. And then if they hit me with something, it's like I turn off, it turns me off in a sense. So that was, he was really big. And then I had,
real quick though, what happened in his life that prevented him from going to high school?
Family, poor.
Had to work.
Yeah. He went into the military. I think really young, went to Korea. So he was born in 1931. So, I just think that he was one of 13 brothers and sisters, farm community, and just had to work. But I think back then school wasn't, college probably wasn't even anything that was even remotely on their mind. It was just hard work. And
did he have siblings? So at that time, did he have older siblings that were in World War II?
Yes, had 2 uncles that were. Yeah, so it was his. That's a while. So his father started having the 13 kids at 68 years old.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So I remember getting in trouble one time at school when they said, hey, take your family tree back to the Civil War. And I did my grandfather. And they were like, no way. It's like, only in Kentucky can you have your, but it worked out that way. That my grandfather literally was in the Civil War. I never met him. Never knew who he was or anything, but he started having kids at 68 and had 13.
And your dad was one of them?
Yes. He was the second. There was 2, a set of twins after him. And then he was the last of the 3, I guess the 3 last.
What was he married before and just didn't have kids?
No.
Or
no?
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So my family history was, it was kind of weird. My mom is really big on, so like her family was all, they were a horse family in Kentucky.
Oh, really?
And my dad's family was, backwards. Dad's family was a horse family. Mom's family was the Morgan's Raiders, if you ever heard that whole thing. So their genealogy goes back into those. So like one was providing horses, another were horse thieves. So it was kind of a neat thing with that. So, yeah. But they're older. My mom was 40 when she had me. My dad was 44.
Okay.
So I grew up kind of an old soul with them because, I'd go to school and they'd be like, oh, how cute, your grandparents are here. It's like my mom would get so mad. But I think it kept them young. And
Yeah. Oops. Hey, there's Joseph again. I want to make sure I show Joseph one more time.
he's not. Are you typing notes? Yep. Okay, good. I can't type.
Joseph's a student at UAH. Again, if I'm acting as if this is live, right? If you're just joining us, and I was telling them though, if in a long form podcast or if you're ever broadcasting a football game or something, part of your job is to go back and tell the story of what people missed, right? Yeah. If you're just joining us, Joseph, how do you pronounce your last name? Thagard. From UAH. So he's here to learn, and we're here to help UAH in any way. If they need a podcast or they want to know how to build a small TV set like we've done in here, we're here to help.
You talk about excited. I'm excited about this stuff because this is the part of my DNA that I don't have.
Really?
I can't. I have no. I'm working on. I can do some videos and do some video editing. I can do Photoshop and things like that. But the whole podcast thing is probably why I've not done anything because I just was like, man, I don't have that, and I don't want to I'm not the one that when somebody ever says go Google it or YouTube it, that's just nuts. I'll hire somebody to do that. I just can't do it.
You know what's interesting for me is, I feel like though, even though I've built this very complicated set, it's only within a small realm of production. Right. I've never seen TV production. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what the equipment is, and I haven't even really spent time to fathom it. It's still a mystery. Radio is the same thing. I do want to go down and take a tour of ZYP or some of the studios and just check it out, just to kind of scratch that itch of is it complex? Is it not complex? But for some reason, I think
won't ruin it for you.
I think it's just.
I'm not talking about ZYP. I'm just saying I won't ruin it.
No, I hear you. Well, that's
the man behind the curtain. It's the Wizard of Oz thing where you come in and you're like, that's what you do. It's like when you go into TV and you're like, that you get on that a TV interview. Yeah. And then you look and they're wearing shorts. They got the suit and the ties all here, and then you get up and there's shorts on, or you get behind the scenes and you're just like, that's how you did that.
And
that makes me mad.
my brother is in the unions of Hollywood, and he's been on movies and commercials, and I kind of get that concept of how you put that all together and edit it and finish it. But for some reason, when it comes to the internet first, which is I started my career in IT and the internet, and I have a brain that kind of thinks in the OSI model. And then just enough with all this equipment, all the cameras are just HDMI out. And I used to do some stuff with SDI. There's just something about the signal of a video signal and an audio signal and the internet, that's the space my brain operates in. And then it all makes sense. Yeah. But then at the same time, I don't feel like I'm an uber technical person where I could just plug and play and maybe I could.
Right.
But for some reason this just makes sense to me.
I think even on the big TV and radio, they cut corners.
Yeah.
Just like anybody else because they're on a budget or they got to figure out.
Well, they got a big staff.
Right. And so they even have. I probably in the movies where I'm sure their ways are constantly figuring out how. Okay, go back to the Star Wars guys and the elaborate things that they were building, and now it's a computer. Or they figured a way to always how do we do it quicker and easier? It's like human nature. You're just how can I do this? Where I think when you get to a TV or radio station, you see a lot of that. I feel fortunate from the radio side because I got to learn the harder stuff in radio. Where the old school guys, they had reel to reels, and if you did a phone call, you had to take the reel to reel, and you had to go and edit and splice and cut the reel. All these things. Where now it's you just have a Adobe Audition up, and you're recording the phone call, and it's real easy to clip it and cut it, and it's just the old dogs are man, this radio was tough, because I remember recording commercials, and and you'd have to, they want a sound effect of a car here, or they want a window breaking or whatever, and I literally was like, gosh, I don't have that. So I had to go get a piece of glass and break it, or I got to start here, because we'd use the cart machines, where you'd have to do the cart, and it was you didn't have a way to edit that. Yeah. So it was one take, go, or you'd have to get the big electromagnet and erase the cart, and put it back in. So I'm glad that I got to see that progression because now it's almost so easy. You're just really? This is all that it was?
There's this awesome documentary. I think the guy lives in New Jersey, and he basically produces all the sound effects for movies for Hollywood. And it's just in this warehouse. And it might be, let's say someone's walking through the woods and he'll just go and think through and take an old shutter or something, and he'll just like in his mind think, how do I replicate that with all this junk that I have in my warehouse? And he will. And you would be amazed at like whatever he used. It's like MacGyver. Whatever tools he used to create that sound, yet someone's walking through the woods, and you would never believe that he could have thought that in his mind.
And he didn't learn that. No offense, he didn't learn that from college.
No,
that was just some guy that was just his brain just operated different.
Yeah,
to where they.
Well, it's like Rick Rubin. He's been interviewed a lot, and he's like he doesn't even know how to use sound mixers, and he just kind of lays down and just. People like, so what are you hearing right now? Are you hearing the drum and the piano? He's like, no, it's just, I'm just feeling the music. Yeah. And then they kind of look at him and like, what does that mean? So he just operates in a different dimension.
Yeah.
And yet he just, everything he touches is gold.
Well, he's operating in his passion.
Yeah. There you go.
It's a situation where when you're passionate about something, it's like for me, you talked about all the different things. The number one thing of friends and people that I get, and they'll ask my wife, they're like, how does he do everything that he does? Because you would think there's no way to balance all that stuff out, whether it would, especially back more into the radio side of things, because I would work a full day of radio, which then you had to, because you had to do live shows. There was nothing pre-recorded or any of that kind of stuff that was done. So you had to do your shift, and then you had to prepare for your shift. But then the way to make it, extra money would be going out and do a bar gig or go do this or MC some event or whatever. That was the way you hustled and made extra money. And I mean, there was times where it's like, and you're not making as much money as you thought, you should be, or at least what everybody thought you were making. They'd see you out, you'd be, I remember one time I delivered pizza on the side, and I had a pretty good radio show in Bowling Green at the time. And they were like, why are you delivering pizza? You're just like, I don't know, because I'm making like $9 an hour, and you think this is this great, unbelievable thing, but it was my passion. Like I didn't even think about the money that I was making. I mean, my first radio job that I got in college, the first time I ever got to talk on the radio, it was on a radio station called G107 in Bowling Green, Kentucky. They hired me to do overnights. And literally, I was just a board operator making sure everything happened. But the only reason I would do it is because at the bottom of the hour, I got to do a 30-second weather forecast.
Okay.
But I had to have a regular job throughout the day. Got that. Going to school, doing all that stuff, and I literally took an alarm, and I would sleep on the floor and just set my alarm to get back up.
You wanted to do that to kind of add to your resume? And
just to get started, because that time back then, when the radio, and this was been 1994, 95, right as I got out of high school and into college, you had to do that. Unless you just had some booming set of pipes, they didn't give you a shot. And that was my thing. My voice is deeper now.
Yeah.
But back then I didn't have a deep voice. I remember I had teachers that were like, hey, you're going to have to smoke cigars and drink whiskey to do something to work on your voice. And I'm like,
or I could just turn the gain up on the soundboard.
Right. But no, you had to.
Yeah.
There was if you got in and you got a radio show first shot out of the gate, you were a unicorn. There was no way that you had to go through the ropes. You had to do, a little bit here, then they'd see what's going on, then they'd take a chance on you, and it was usually who you knew, or I'd know someone. And that was the thing with radio, is that you had to, that really hindered me, is that when I was here, probably had the best part of my career as far as success when I was on 95.1 the Rocket and doing that. But the only way you would advance was somebody else in another market would hear you, or maybe you're kicking the tail of the crosstown rival. Let's say I'm beating WZYP, and then Cumulus Broadcasting would go, hey, man, this guy, FreakDaddy, he's killing us. Okay, well, we've got a rock job in Charleston, South Carolina. Let's just hire him out. Let's just send him off to another place. Maybe he'll like the beach, or he'll do whatever. But that would be the only way that you could kind of have that little moment of renegotiating your contract and doing the value, because here locally, you just couldn't do it.
It's recruit and relocate the competition.
Right. And so I got, I had Timothy and Wesley, my two boys, and they were here, and, they eventually got divorced, and it was like, I can't leave.
Yeah.
I know people do it, and you have to do certain things, but at that time it was like, it's not worth being out away from them.
Sure.
I had chances where I got, job offers to go up to Nashville to work for the Predators and stuff. And it was just like, can't, 2 hours away is a long way for people's lives. And I know that I'd miss the stuff I'm missing out, like I'm getting to do now, whether it's a football or wrestling or whatever. So
yeah, I know the FBI is dealing with that right now, and and it's not just the FBI. It's anytime a new headquarters is built somewhere, or in this case, it's a second headquarters, or they close a base, and then the people that have to move or being asked to move, they may have a dual income, and where's the spouse going to work in the new city? What are those options? And then sometimes they just can't do it.
Yeah,
it just has them either leave and pursue other opportunities or transition somewhere else within the bureau in this case. But it's not that simple, right? Not everybody's. We came down just because we were kind of at a stage of life a year ago where we had 2 in college and kind of 2 still in high school, and my wife stays home, doesn't work outside the home. Let's do it. Let's move.
And probably easier to move from DC, where the 1,000 square foot home is $1 million. It's so expensive. Where here the cost of living starting to change a little bit in Alabama, but I mean I think at one point it was.
Well, there you have most people have mega commutes. It's either just congestion, and it just takes forever to get somewhere because you live within all that, or you live farther out. So you can afford a home, but you got to mega drive in, to the office. And that's just, so having said that, that's why I love radio so much. Because I spent 20 years driving, at least an hour one way. So you have your morning drive and your afternoon drive. And I've always been a huge into radio because that was something that was just there.
It was your sanity.
I never really met the hosts or the on-air personalities. There was a couple times I did, but all about them, and you can talk to people at work about that particular station or this particular station, and the contest and calling in and winning stuff.
Yep.
And so let's now talk about. I'd love to hear from you because Huntsville is an area that there's people coming from all over the country, and I'm one of them. And I'm not the only one. I know people are coming here and they have especially if they're older, they've grown up on the radio, and maybe it was a syndicate thing or maybe it was a local thing. But what I don't have yet, even after a year of being here, is a good appreciation for kind of the history of the radio. And you've worked for a few stations, but can you help kind of paint this picture of some of the shows that have been here? Obviously we'll talk about what you've done, but maybe some of the other popular ones and how they've come and gone, and as it kind of shifts around, as I kind of hunt on the radio dial. Can you give some context? I think some of our listeners will really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because how are we supposed to know until you actually talk to someone like, oh, Freak Daddy's here. You can tell us.
Right. I moved here in 2003, May of 2003. I was working for a Cumulus in Lexington, Kentucky. And Cumulus Broadcasting had just bought Athens Broadcasting, which is ZYP, and their stations there. I think, they've had so many different. The Possum was a country station or whatever. Now it's like Nash Icon.
Right.
I came in because they were scared to death that it was the first one of the big 2, or Cumulus and Clear Channel now iHeart was coming in, and Cumulus had this dirty business side of things that when they would go into a market, they would call it devaluing radio. It was a sales tactic they would do. So they would go in and, like, say, for instance, like WDRM, which is iHeart, at some point it was just a monster. They had more cumulative listeners for WDRM than all 3 TV stations combined.
Wow.
It was huge, still huge. But it was the 100,000 watt radio station that would go from Nashville to Birmingham. It was a reporting station. So every country song, hit song, they all had to be on there. So, but what they would do is they would come into the market and say, let's say the going rate for a 60-second commercial on WDRM was $150 a spot. Cumulus would go into a market and say, is it really $160 a spot? Well, they're at a 21 share. We're at a 10. Let's just charge $40.
Wow.
And maybe they'll go, yeah, I know they're better, but my pocketbook's only going to allow me to do a $40 commercial. So they would go in, and it would force some of these bigger guys that were making money if they were smart, and they really weren't allowed to do that. They really weren't allowed to collude, but you would kind of get the 3-headed, 4-headed monster that was in North Alabama and say, hey man, we're fighting the TV station. We're fighting the billboard company. We need radio to be strong. So don't do that. Let's keep all the spots somewhat normal so that we're all making money. But then when you devalue that radio, then it goes down. And now DRM, like I said, I'm getting in so much trouble sharing all these secrets. But I mean, it's just the reality of what it is they're not allowed to charge what they used to charge. And then that just disrupts everything because now you're questioning your talent. Hey, I love this person, but can I afford to pay this?
Mm-hmm.
Or, man, I've got sales reps that were making massive buku money and now they can't. So now they're on shaky ground, and it just, just the whole thing was really, really crazy, as far as that goes. So, but when I got here, it was, I'd say probably the big, to be fair, I want to be fair to everybody because I became friends with a lot of them, and actually worked for 2 of the different ones. So you had iHeart or Clear Channel that had WDRM 100.3 The River. They had Talk Station. They had now they've got a KISS, like a Top 40 or a Hot AC. Then they got the Alt 92.9, but they've been different things. So you got that one over there. You've got Cumulus that has ZYP, the UMP, different ones like that are over there. I'm probably gonna not give them credit for all the different stations they have, but they would use those to try to just bolster up ZYP, right? So if ZYP needed to beat WDRM, hey, their spot's $150, but I can take ZYP, the UMP, and whatever, and you can do commercials on all of them, and you can get 3 stations for the cost of what's going to cost you to do this one.
Yeah.
Then you had where I worked when I first got here was Rocket City Broadcaster. It was STG Media when I got here, but it's Rocket 95.1, Star 99.1, and then they have it was a Jammin' 1550, but I think it's now that and I think 98.1 The Beat, hip hop station, and then there was the sole ownership, a family that owns Mix 96.9, which is one that was Light 96.9. So really, you had those 4 were kind of the ones that were in the market, the ones that made, and it would just go back and forth. The big shows. There was a this is before my time, but like a big one that was there was an Ace and TJ that was on WZYP. Rick and Bubba were on the Rocket, which I was on, which was kind of
that was 95.1.
That was 95.1. Now they're on 100.3 The River.
Okay,
but it was these, always going back and forth and jockeying of who can do this and who's got what shows and the big morning shows where WDRM was always huge. They just said they had they pretty much in the main demos they had it because it was just so big. Then Rocket had Rick and Bubba. Now they've got Jimbo and Casio, which is local. Then Star 99.1 has I'm going Josie and Kevin, their morning show, and then you got Mojo doing his ZYP over there, and then a girl Abby Kate, I think, is one of the ones that's kind of been the regular at Mix 96.9. So you've kind of had those, but you see it's dwindling of the support cast, to be able to keep the full. I think Rocket and Star have been able to keep full-time local people. I think ZYP didn't do that at first, but I think they are trying to hold on to more of that local feel. Mix 96.9 has their local, but as it changes in certain time slots, they just can't. And that was where me is like they couldn't afford, or the local people here wanted to keep everybody, but there would be mandates that would come from corporate, and corporate just looked at you like what's your line item? What's your what's the number? Hey, we've got they don't look at, hey, we got like when I went to Alt 92.9, which is the last radio station I was at, they kind of came to me and said, hey, would you like to? Because I'd gotten off of it and was just kind of, man, I'm tired of the hustle. I'm trying to, do all this stuff. And then they were like, hey, we're going to launch this new station. Would you like to be our anchor in afternoons? And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, hey, you really want me to be like the one that helps launch a radio station? It was a small station, probably had no chance to ever get the numbers because it was just, like on a translator. It didn't have the, all the main stuff with radio was like, can you hear it? How far does it go? Does it penetrate Huntsville, Maine, or is it, over more into Decatur or whatever? But they just couldn't, and you'll see now where you'll have, you'll hear multiple hosts. It used to be they try to fake it. You'd be, this person's on, I ain't gonna pick on, anybody, because they'll be like, gosh, he's, but this person's on, this radio station, and their name is Susie Smith on this radio station, and then they go to the country station, it's Mary Jane, and she's a totally different character, but you don't see them, so you have no idea. And then they had ways of, you'd either be live. That's where I'm gonna get in trouble. But this was the part that aggravated me so much, because I grew up on radio, and it was like, kind of goes back to one of those other mantras that people give you. Dave Ramsey would always say, you can do anything. Anything we want to do as Americans, as humans, we can do anything. The question you should always ask is, should you? Never can. Should you? And I think in the radio world and TV and, all these different things with technology, it was like, no, don't. Yeah, you can do that. You can take one person and let them record every show for classic rock.
Yeah.
But Huntsville, Alabama is not like New York. I mean, it's a different dichotomy. It's, it's a more rural, even though we're technical and stuff like that. It's go look at the fancy restaurant in downtown Huntsville and then go to Cracker Barrel. Fancy restaurant has its moments. Cracker Barrel's always packed. Now, COVID kind of changed a lot of stuff, but I mean, it was just, there was this, small town with a big town but still here. And so it was one of these things where like, no, keep the local radio personalities. Figure out ways to not devalue the cost of the radio program or do these things and isolate yourself. I looked at like television was one of the things where the invention of DVR, great. I love fast forwarding through every commercial, but why would you ever do that? Because that cut out every bit of revenue that you had.
Right.
Didn't really affect the big dogs because they're getting that national ad dollar from Pepsi or Papa John's or Domino's or whatever, but the local person's not getting that.
Yeah.
So now they're screwed. Like it's hard for them to go to, the local, person and say, hey, would you like to advertise on the Super Bowl? Well, how much does that cost? Well, it's $20,000.
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Right.
But, those were things. And like I said, the radio side of things where it gets you in trouble is like with my shows, I would have to do things where they couldn't pay you to be there full time. So you would have to do what's called voice tracking, where you just go in and you just do your show and you could do it days in advance.
Yeah.
And it would take what normally would be a 4-hour shift. I can do it in 30 minutes because they didn't want you to talk a lot. They didn't want you to add the personality. And that was my thing. The personality for me is what I wanted that story, kind of like what you're talking about when you were, listening to the radio. So the things that captivated the most was probably when they were real and they introduced people. And that was stuff that I was taught, I told my wife, told my kids, hey, you may get embarrassed because I'm probably going to share a story. If you do something funny and it's content, it's getting shared.
I could always tell when there was like genuine chemistry with the team. Some of that, there was one show in particular I liked where they were all buddies, but they had been buddies like their whole life. And so the radio was more of just, they had already bantering back and forth about things in sports. And then at some point they're like, hey, we should start a radio show. And a lot of it worked because anytime there's like disagreements, you can kind of know when something is scripted. Yep. And it's the same frustration I have with social media and on like YouTube and these videos that are all pretty much orchestrated, right? It's all fixed. Very few things are real. Like I miss the old Funniest Home Videos when it was before people are like, okay, let's do this thing and let's become famous and get all these likes and clicks because we're going to pretend that this thing was an accident, or whatever.
Let me hit you in the face with a baseball bat and we'll record it. It'll be awesome. No, it won't.
But I really, and then you could always tell, I could always tell when there was like a host and a co-host that just really didn't get along. Right. They didn't have very good chemistry. And I would kick myself because I'm thinking, all right, I should have started my career in this because I'm being way too critical and I should be on that show. Right. Right. I could help like fix that chemistry, with someone, or I could do a better job, and like, well, I guess if you're, go ahead and just prove it then. Right. But I didn't do that. But I like kind of like you're saying, and I even struggle sometimes with not doing a live show. I would prefer to do live so that we could talk about stuff that's happening today. Right. Today is January 25th, right? Right. This won't post for probably 2 or 3 weeks because I also have to get ahead of the game so that I have time to edit and different things can happen with guests and all that. But if I talk about something now that happens on January 25th, well, 3 weeks from now when I release this, well, it's kind of old news.
Right.
You know,
and they think it's live.
And
gosh, they're so behind it.
Yeah.
Did you hear Princess Diana died? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? But the other thing that I equally frustrates me is just the fact that the old technologies of a landline phone, I don't think anything will ever be able to replace that quality of just picking up a landline and doing analog and making a phone call and the quality of that, right?
Right.
Nothing can replace that, I don't think. Same thing with just turning on the radio, having an alarm clock, next to your bed that had the radio and the radio comes on. Now, and even TV, it used to be easier just to turn on the TV. Now you got to turn on the TV and go through some portal and go through all the apps. And then I have to go to, and we get our live TV from Hulu. And then I got to log into Hulu. And then, a minute and a half later, I might be watching something live.
Right.
And, to your point, DVR and stuff has made it such that you can always kind of maybe rewind something. It's already like recording and all that.
Right.
But I was thinking about this morning. I was actually listening to Mojo. Maybe it was even yesterday. And I was kind of thinking, why does the FCC even now have to regulate radio? Because in podcasts, we could cuss all day if we wanted to.
Right.
And no one is saying that we can't. And there's millions and millions of people listening to all these different shows, and they do whatever they want to do. But we're going to pick on the old tried and true medium of radio and censor them, where it's almost like, well, why?
Right.
It almost becomes like laughable.
Well, they would do what they call it safe harbor, where past 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, you can do whatever you want to. And it's like, so you're saying kids aren't up at 10? You'd have been to my house. Like, I'm about to run in going, hey, just go to bed, get to bed. So,
and I guess it's kind of like that. Well, okay, you can't cuss on the radio because kids are up, but they're probably up on their iPad or they're on their phone, and who knows what they're watching on TikTok and anything else, right?
Right.
So it's like, do we really have to be that protective of one medium?
And we think that when they go into the school that it's great, and there's never a curse word ever said in a school, right? It's like, come on.
So I don't know if we touched on this yet, but in Western Kentucky, I mean, what started this passion where you wanted to get into broadcasting or announcing or whatever it was? Like, when did that take shape for you in your life?
Actually went back before then. So my dad, the old soul, he worked his butt off, but he was a huge talk radio show fan.
Okay.
So when we would wake up, he was work night shift, but the weekends we would usually get to hang out. But every Saturday and Sunday morning, we would listen to WHAS, which was the big talk station. It was an AM station. This was back before the AM FM switch, and you could listen to WHS in Orlando, Florida.
Wow.
Because, the radio waves, FM's directional, AM's going up and down. So depending on the weather, it just kept bouncing. So, and some stations had to power down. Some stations could stay on full power. Because really the main reason for radio was not for your entertainment.
Yeah.
It was set up so that if a war broke out or bad weather or whatever, people could be informed. That was the main thing. So, I mean, they took it really serious in the original days. I mean, you'd have to sign a piece of paper when you started, and when you signed off, you had to sign a piece of paper, and you had your own certification card that said you were who you said you were and stuff like that. So my dad was a huge there was a guy named Terry Miners, very funny talk guy in WHS. There's also a guy named Joe Elliott, which was he was a talk show guy, but he was fully 100% legally blind.
Oh, wow.
And did all his show Braille and everything. So I was fascinated. And then Kaywood Ledford, who was the Kentucky basketball announcer, because we didn't have all the TV stations. So when you'd watch a Kentucky basketball game, we didn't listen to the announcers on TV. We had the radio on. And it's kind of funny, there's a delay, which you didn't know this but you thought these people were gods,
Yeah.
Mike Keith, who's the voice of the Tennessee Titans, did a promo that was I told him, I said, that is the best promo I've ever heard. Radio's a 7-second delay, TV's 10.
Mm.
So we'd be watching the Kentucky basketball games, player go to shoot, Kaywood Ledford would go, it's good, and it hadn't went in yet. So you're like, this guy's like, a magician. How is he knowing? And Mike Keith actually did one of those one time where the same thing. People would come to him and say, man, you call a touchdown before it's even in. And he's like, Mike Keith, the guru, the czar of football. He tells it before. He's so psychic. He can do it before. And I said, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But like I said, I loved all that stuff. Then where I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up in Shelbyville, Kentucky, which is just outside of Louisville, in between Louisville and Frankfort. And the Kentucky State Fair was a huge thing. Well, when you would go to the State Fair, all the radio stations would have their booths set up, and they would broadcast live from the Kentucky State Fair. So you got to go see, like you talked about, you got to go see these people that you're like, oh my gosh, these are, and for whatever reason, all those guys were just so nice to me. Terry Miners, I'd met Kay Wood, and I was like, it just locked in. I was like, man, I want to do this. Like, this is amazing. How do they do this? There was a guy named Coyote Calhoun that was on the big WAMZ out of Louisville. They were just like folk heroes to you, and you saw them, and you got to get their autograph, and you got to talk to them, and you knew everything about them, and now you get to see them. So went to school, didn't even know that's how you did it. I really didn't have the education to know. I went, started out, went to Murray State University. I was going to be an art major. I like to draw, I like to do that. I was going to do art and psychology is what I went to school first, and wanted to play football, but that didn't work out at Murray. Transferred to Western, and literally I went there, and there was a job fair, and they were like, you can be a radio DJ. And I was like, what? Like, how does this happen? Go and meet. At that time, Western was the number one broadcast school in the country because they had a photojournalism that they combined it. And it was like, so I get to do this? And then it was, when you went into certain classes, you had to do a shift on the campus station. So you're like, this is so cool. I got to do my first basketball game. Never had done it before in my life. Talked about it, wanted to do it, but it was like I got to be the color guy with Western Kentucky Hilltoppers basketball. And it was so funny because I'm just like, I'm a fan. It was so hard to like go in and
provide analysis.
You're here at the game. I would be just excited to be at the game. Yeah. Now I'm sitting courtside, and what I say someone's listening to was just fascinating to me.
That was your first assignment, or
once I went into school. That was like the first one that I really got to do the actual show. And we talked about Casey Armstrong, who was on the Howard Stern show.
Yeah.
He had a show, Casey and the Brain, that they were doing certain things, and so you got to see all these people. And I mean, I can't even remember half the shifts and things that I did, but it was just, you got that first bit where you're on the radio, and the call would come in, and it'd be, a girl in dorm, whatever, like, oh, are you going to be in the quad tomorrow? And you're like, oh my gosh. It's like, I got cred now. I am somebody.
Let me ask you this, because this happened to me when 10 years ago. Well, it's been 10 years now. When I did my first live stream football game, high school. So I spent all this time preparing. Okay, how am I going to do this? And this, older technology, it's crazy to say it's only been 10 years, right? But how am I going to get this out there? So I had, what kind of microphone and soundboard. This was just the beginning for me, just trying to figure it all out. And so I get to the point, I think it was like the night before the game. So I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm ready. And it was just audio. It wasn't, didn't have to do video at the time. But I was just learning so many things so fast. And mostly, how does all this equipment work, and make sure that it doesn't bomb. And then I had this realization: wait a minute, I'm calling a football game, and while I played football, it's been a while since I've really paid attention to every call, every possible penalty, or just formations, and the game had changed a lot since I had played, and so then I had to cram all that night in a way, and watch a bunch of stuff, and kind of read up on the spread offense and different things, so that I could act like an intelligible play-by-play person that knew football. You know what I mean? Right. So did you find that same thing kind of with basketball? Like, hey, as much as we all like basketball and you're a fan, now you have to wait a minute. Now I have to provide a little bit more of an expertise to my call.
Yeah. I think it was radio for 26 years, and I don't think I was ever fully prepared. Even when I do like the Havoc stuff, I do James Clemens football. You're never ready. You're always evolving, and sometimes you have a game plan. Like I'll have more like bullet, like, hey, this is what I want to hit. Probably like how you're doing your show. You probably got 10, 20 things but chances are you may get to 3 of those things because
Yep.
it diverts or it goes different ways. But yeah, I remember the first basketball game I did. It was Wimp Sanderson, who was a basketball coach at Alabama, had went down and was coaching at one of the teams in the OVC. I think it was Alabama State, or Arkansas State. I can't remember which school. But I was a huge fan of Wimp Sanderson. So here we are, and you're trying to be all cool and everything, and they're like, okay, we're getting ready to do the post-game press conference. And I'm like, oh, we get to go in. That's so cool. And you go in and you're going to, what question am I going to ask? What's going on? Well, he was like, I don't know if you know who Wimp is or whatever.
I don't.
Just very gruff. I mean, just like the mean pawpaw of every, I could look at him. And he'd gotten in trouble at Alabama with like messing around with a woman or something like that and got fired from Alabama.
Okay.
So here he is in the press conference, and the reporter, which I was never that person, was like, okay, I hate to ask this, but
I have to.
yeah, how do you feel now that you're at this smaller OVC school and you're not at Alabama because you had an affair? And I mean, it was like, what are you doing? Like, I'm like, holy crap, he's going to kill this guy. And he was like, blah, 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 F this guy, everybody get out of this damn place, whatever, except you, and pointed to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is Wimp Sanderson. This is a guy I watched on Kentucky. I've seen him. He was in Alabama. He wore a plaid jacket. So it was like the coolest thing, but he always showed up.
Like a Gene Stallings.
Kind of like the Bear Bryant deal.
Or Bear Bryant, yeah.
But he was a plaid jacket where Bear had the houndstooth hat. And he kicked everybody out. And I remember, I'm like, I'm scared to death. And he goes, I've kicked every sumbitch in here out except you. You better have one good goddamn question or I'll kick you out too. And I was like, okay. I know you've probably told this 1,000 times, but maybe some of our listeners here at the school don't know the history of your plaid jacket. Could we talk about your plaid jacket?
There you go.
And I mean, we talked forever. And he's like, all right, I got to go coach a basketball game.
This was
goes,
pregame.
Yeah, pregame. He goes, I got to go coach a basketball game, but thank you, son. Best of luck, and left. Well, Western was just beating the hell out of them. And he comes by our announcer thing and goes, screw this, I'm not even going to the damn locker room. Can I sit down with you boys? And he sat outside. And I don't have a tape of this. That's the crazy thing. You didn't have the pre-recording, nothing. It was, I don't think anybody was even listening at the campus radio station. And he sat down and did the whole halftime show with us because he was so pissed off that his team, he didn't go to the locker room.
Wow.
And it was just so cool. And I'm like,
so why did he isolate you? Because you were
probably he could probably tell. I mean, it probably was glowing that I was just totally clueless. And he's like, okay, it's going to be sink or swim. Like, this kid's going to either answer this question or I'm going to make him not want to do radio. It was, and I was like, holy crap. This was like,
I guess you could have asked him, what's the origin of your name, Wimp?
Right.
Because you seem to be the antithesis of a wimp.
Yeah. And like I said, but I learned from that, and I've never, in all of my radio days or whatever, I never wanted to get really extremely controversial.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just kept as real as I possibly could, and I knew where my areas where I lacked. Like I said, you can prepare all you want to. I won't say I didn't prepare, but I just went in going like every day, honest, and I can say this, it's the same way with the Havoc game. James Clemens, even though, I still get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have that, like, I get to do this.
Yeah.
This is so cool. Like, I get to play, like, here, hey, can you be on my podcast? I joked with you when you said that. Like, apparently you don't have anybody to ask to be on your podcast. But, because I don't think, of myself as a celebrity or any of that kind of stuff. But it's cool. It's like, man, this is awesome. We get to talk, and it's just fun, and it's going to be shared, and who's going to see it, and what stories, it's just, that's cool. So I've always kind of kept that attitude the entire time. Like, I mean, I was probably very real. My ex-wife, Timothy and Wesley's mom, I have Timothy's first cry.
Really?
Recorded. My wife was ready to kill me because here she's giving birth.
Oh.
And I have called in on the phone to Jimbo Wood, who's now morning, he was doing afternoons. And Timothy had just popped out. I mean, I'm talking just arrived. And I'm like, go live. Okay. We're with Freak Daddy. Freak Daddy has just had, now everything with me, it was FreakBaby was Timothy. So I did I had the Freak Daddy compound. You had Freak Mama, FreakBaby, and then my mom and dad, Freak Pawpaw and Freak Mama. I mean, I had the whole story. But I've got it still this day. They're like, hey, and you hear him cry, and you can hear the emotion because I got choked up. Jimbo got choked up. And I was just like, and I had more people come up to me and say, hey, I'm not even married. I probably will never have a kid. It was like I got to be there when you had your kid,
Huh.
you know, and those kind of things. So I was like, once that happened, everything, like I said, the wife would, ex-wife, and even my current wife now would be like, did you have to share that story? But I'm like, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, you can sit and talk about this. You can do a podcast, but if it doesn't connect or it doesn't, relate to someone in their day-to-day life, then what? It's not that important.
Yeah.
Would you share the stories and they can either go, hey, that's a cool story. I get to kind of live through you because I've never done something like that. Or it's like, just had this fight with my wife. We were actually going to church and she called me a name that you probably shouldn't say when you're going to church. And everybody's like, we do that too.
Yeah. Right.
Where it's not this, oh, everybody's great. And I'd love to be like them. They do date nights and they do all these things. And it's like, no, the reality is, it's like, you're tired and you've worked and you need to share these real stories with people that maybe helps them feel a little bit better about them. Hey, we were about to get a divorce, but I've never called you that name. So at least we're doing something right. Or,
Before I ask you what I think is now the natural question, I want to provide a little context in how I met you actually I didn't meet you till recently,
right.
But I saw you. So when I started the podcast, my second episode was with Penn Garvich, who at the time was the director for the Huntsville Championship, which was the golf tournament through the Korn Ferry Tour, which is the feeder tour to the PGA.
Right.
That was my episode 2. And it just so happens, and at that time, my first episode was Ricky Fernandez. I recorded on a Wednesday. I posted on Thursday. Now I've got to find another guest.
Right.
I was running things
Churning and
pretty
burning,
tight.
right?
I find out later other people start a podcast like, oh yeah, you should record 4 and start releasing. I was like, well, I didn't do that. I was anxious to get going, but we got tickets to go see the Havoc because now we're kind of new to Huntsville and we're trying to do all these different things. And I told the story when I got connected with Penn through a friend. Shout out to Jessica Washburn. She lives at the Ledges where they host the tournament, and I had met her through work and business mixers, and so she put me in touch with them. So I was like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And then we go to the Havoc game, and he actually dropped the puck because they were like 2 weeks away. I think it was that point. It was 2 weeks away from the tournament, so they're in promotion, full on 110 miles an hour, promoting the heck out of this thing. You can get all the radio, all the television. He's doing interviews all the time, and then I see you. And you might have I think you were on the ice, and he comes out and does the honorary puck drop. And I told my family, hey, I'm going to be interviewing him on Tuesday, whatever. Well, that's pretty cool. And then, I kind of sit back, and of course, I appreciate not just the game, but I look around and I like to look at the production of what music they're playing, what videos are they playing, and just, the lights. And I appreciate I know how hard that is. Yeah. And I appreciate that. And then how you can, I think we do an excellent job at Toyota Field and at Probst Arena with the Havoc in our minor league sports and the time and effort, right, that's put into it. And then I see this FreakDaddy guy, and like, okay, so he's the on ice MC, and so to me, I'm like, hey, celebrity status. Like, I wonder if I'll ever get to meet him, and I would love to interview him at some point. And I can't remember since then. I think I might have seen you at a Pandas game, maybe, and I'm not sure if you were wearing your FreakDaddy jersey or someone said, "Oh, I think that's FreakDaddy," but it just was one of those things where I wasn't able to come and like try to meet you,
right? And
then lo and behold, I'm at my wrestling. Was that? I think it was like a tournament on a Saturday,
yeah,
or was it dual?
James Clemens? It was the one because they'd asked because Coach Pecourt asked me. He said, "Hey, because honestly, like to me with the kids and doing the announcing and stuff for high school,
yeah."
I enjoy that. And then even I do 7th grade and 8th grade Liberty basketball and football.
Okay.
I love that more than anything.
Yeah.
Because they don't get it. They never get someone to say their name. They never get to do that.
That's all they want. And if you mess it up, well, believe me, those parents will let you know.
100%. They're in high school football games.
They're like, it's Richardson, or something.
There's a kid, I'll never forget it, Jamal Mayers, who played, just graduated this year at All-State. They had his name on my sheet, which, like I said, you're the mercy of what they write, what they give you, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I'm like, just give me a list. It was Meyers.
That was Myers.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But his name is Mayors. So it's Mayers.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going by what I read.
Right.
So I'm calling it. And I mean, this mom busts up in the press box and is like, who's the announcer? Who's the guy? My son's name is Mayers. I'm like, okay, here. I will say it however you want. I'll make up a name, whatever you want to do. Yeah, so no, they're aggressive. But Coach Pecord said, Timothy's doing it. And Timothy's been really good because I came in and I was like, I got the opportunity to do the James Clemens football stuff. And I knew he was going to play. And I was like, hey, you know me. I don't come in half. I come in guns blazing. I was like, do you want me to or not? And he was like, yeah, I want you to. Because he knew for me to be able to call his name, top of the list.
Yeah.
He knows my personality. Like I've met tons of celebrities, all these people. I've introduced famous bands, famous people.
Yeah.
For me to be able to go starting center for James Clemens Jets, Tim Coleman is tops. You can't pay me.
Did you get emotional?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't even for senior night. They're like, "What are you gonna do for senior night?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, well, you have to be on the field. You can't announce. And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that." But yeah, no, absolutely did. Got choked up, and but the guys that were in the booth with me knew. It was just like that's just. And I told the guys at James Clemens, like, you kind of got me now because you realize that you don't have, I don't get paid. I don't, do all that kind of stuff. Like, you couldn't pay me for what it is. But like the wrestling stuff was. I went to Pecor and I was like, man, I've never been to wrestling before. I was like, is this like WWE? Can they have walkout music? Can they do all that? Because I was like, because I remember going to the first ones. I'm like, this sucks. This is the most boring. Because I'm, like I said, probably like you said, every time you go to something, you're critiquing it. You're like, how can I make this better?
Right.
I'm used to the Havoc where it was like, we got to the point where the Havoc, people may realize this when they've been here, but probably don't even know. When I started working for the Havoc, a good night was 2,500 people.
Oh, wow.
And everybody was excited. But we were wanted to grow, and the city was growing, and we were like one year we only won 11 games. It's like, how do you market?
54 game schedule, right?
56.
56.
With 28 home and 28 on the road.
That's bad.
And how do you market?
Yeah.
When of the 28 you won, of the 56 you won 11. We didn't win hardly any home games. But that year our attendance numbers and season ticket holders numbers doubled, and our advertising doubled because we sat down. Our owner Keith Jeffries, an amazing guy, me, Ashley Balch, and Justin Strickland, who's now the president of the team. We're like, they don't care about hockey. It doesn't matter. If the guys can maybe try to have a fight, that'll work. But we need to make this experience when they come in.
That's right.
And they go, man, it only cost us how much? Man, that was fun.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the score was. I don't know who the hell he played.
Right.
That was the way. So that's, for me, it was like I went to Pecor and I was like, hey, no offense, but this experience is awful. As a parent, it's awful because it's hurry up and wait. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
There's so many volunteers that you don't know when your son's going to wrestle, if your son's going to wrestle. And it's like, and there's no music. This is awful. Like, just pure hell. He's like, well, they really do. So I was like, but this ain't tennis. Like we need to have. So that night he gave me the opportunity to do some of the walkout music, for the guys or whatever. And he picked it all. I was ready to pick it, but he was funny. He did, some songs where you're just like there's one kid, Max Bell, that's on the team that he calls him Little Orphan Annie.
Yeah.
Because he's got curly hair and stuff like that. So he made his walkout music Little Orphan Annie.
I tell you what, I've actually, my older son went to state. This was when we were in Virginia. And it was one of those arenas. It was in Salem, Virginia, and it was like a civic center type thing. But it was one of those stadiums where you didn't have access. You like the front row, if you will, was kind of raised up, and so everyone was kind of looking down. I think the Crossplex or in Birmingham, their facility is kind of like that.
Okay,
there's what I'm trying to say is. It was just a great vantage point where even in the front row, everyone can kind of look down. But so, in a big tournament, there's all these mats and everything. But when it came to the finals, then you get all the mats out of there. You put one mat in the center. They put like kind of a spotlight over it. And now, it's packed because now you're into the finals.
And it just did the
And
atmosphere.
they isolate and they do the introductions. And
as a sports fan and an athlete, I'm jacked.
And I had a press pass because I was doing stuff for the high school, and so I just kind of on a whim says, well, hey, can I get a press pass? I do live streaming. Like, sure. So I got to be on the ground and had a camera and I'm like filming. I'll tell you what, man, there's just nothing like live sports.
Yeah.
And to be down on the ice or down on the court or, on the mat and everyone's cheering. And in wrestling, it's just one-on-one. I mean, even better, right? It's all that attention on those two people. Yeah. And I was just like, wow. It was just an incredible environment.
Yeah.
That it was made because they just thought some of those little details. Hey, let's make this special for these kids. They didn't have to turn the lights down, but they did. Yeah. And I think there may have been some walkout music. And or just introducing them, like just put a little time, and you can, if you do those little things, it'll make it even that much more memorable, and people will talk about it.
Absolutely, and for the kid, like for me, I tell Timothy all the time. It's like some of these things. My high school, small, 14,000 person community, real country, now playing for, it wasn't it wasn't the big deal. And if we scored, we didn't have a jumbotron, we didn't have video. There was we were the Shelby County Rockets, which is kind of, I can tell you, it's just a sidebar story of that, but the connection from between Huntsville and my high school was a neat one. But they fired up a rocket when you scored. But now it's like you get to do all this fun stuff. And like I said, I want that, because they may not ever, chances are when you look at the numbers to college or pro, they don't 1% or 2% of them actually are going to get to move on. Why not give them that nugget, that memory? Like I Liberty Middle School, the first one I ever did, they asked me to announce for, it was a county tournament, and it was 7th grade girls basketball. And no offense, but one of the hardest things to watch on the planet is 7th grade girls basketball because they're just learning. Yeah. And it's nothing but travel, jump ball. I mean, it's. But I went in. They said, "Hey, we want you to announce it." I was like, "Okay, so like what?" They're like, how about we take the Chicago Bulls music? I'm like, that's cool. That'd be a good vibe or whatever. And I brought in my own speakers, and I announced them as if I was announcing the Chicago Bulls. And I mean, to see these little girls. Oh, I mean, these girls were like, they were somebody. Yeah. Like I said, they always say the most important thing is someone's name. They want to hear their name.
Well, I was going to, we started the program talking about this, but I think just your contributions have, when the parents get involved, and then it kind of feeds into the coaching staff, then there is all. It always seems like the level of play will increase, right? Or and the team will do better. They'll feed off of what's being put into it. Right. It's if it's purposeful, I know you had put together like the championship belt. So when a guy gets a pen or has a really good
luchador belt,
they win the belt, and those little things. They start to, their chin is up. They have a little bit of swagger. Yeah. And I really do feel like that translates. I remember, like, the high school I went to, we were never really that good at, like, baseball. We had a couple good years here and there. And, again, this kind of goes back to why it's the Our Town podcast. But nowadays, unfortunately, there's a lot more private schools that are plucking talent out from, like, the public schools in town, or even the public schools. There's just so much competition, and there's so much pressure, I think, put on ADs and coaches to have these incredible staff or incredible teams. So they'll start scouting and recruiting players to come to their school. Families will move, and I just felt like in the era I grew up in, it was just look, this is all we got, and it's your team against this other town's team, and there was no like moving and shenanigans. It was just this is what we got. So we were never really good. Well, this kid comes in, this is about 2 years after I graduated, and his dad just started kind of investing in the team, and they put they made the field look better. They put up some of those some things to kind of protect, like some fence liners rather than just looking at chain link. And they got a new scoreboard, and he got some new equipment, and they leveled out part of the field that was embarrassing because there was like a little bit of a little hill, a little rise in right field. And guess what? They start winning. Yeah. It's like still the same town. But it was like a parent came along. He put in some batting cages, just so they could, and then the bullpen used to be kind of an open area. They caged that in, so now it was kind of a protected bullpen. And just like these, I mean, there's some money, right. Maybe it's his money, or they got donors, but it's like a new level of pride was put into the program, and it really started to penetrate, and they started playing like I couldn't believe it. I'm starting to read like the newspaper, these press clippings. Like, did you hear that our teams went to region? Like, what? And I think they qualified for state. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, sometimes when people bind, they bind together and say, hey, let's make a difference.
Yeah. Well, you look at all the famous people that something's happened. T-Bone may watch this and some of the secrets that I may be sharing a little too much with him, but, I'd never had that. My dad was there. I mean, I knew, like, I had my dad, but he didn't know what to tell me. Didn't know training. Didn't know any of that stuff. And like with him, Timothy's turned out really, really good. He started as a sophomore for James Clemens, which is huge on 7A football.
Yeah.
Doing really well in wrestling now, starting to turn the corner. But it was, the whole, these little silly, nuggets of knowledge, but it's like, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just worked with him, and it was just like, hey, buddy, I'm going to invest in you.
Yeah.
When you burn me, I'll quit investing. But hey, let's go work out. Let's do these things. Where do you want to be? I want to be here. Okay, well, I know how to get there. It's going to suck, and it's not going to be fun, but this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to invest in it. I'm going to believe in you, and I'm going to cheer for you, and I'm going to make these, cool videos of you, and, I'm a proud dad. I'm going to do that. But like I said, a lot of it's where, it's funny. Like, I'll send him, like I made a video for him the other day, and I put music to it, and he really liked the music, and I sent it to him, and he was like, dope. Which I know, I'm like, okay,
yeah,
he's liking that. And he said that, I helped him build that, the T-Bone name was just a friend of his, because Timothy was eating like big steaks, and they're just like, this little kid's, eating these big steaks. So it's one of my friends gave him that name. And so I'm like, man, who cares? Let's make it. Let's do a brand.
Right.
I got him little headbands that say T-Bone on it, and I've got a YouTube channel for him, and posting all these things. And I said, just build the brand. Because in the world, if you're going to make it, it's the same situation. Make it what they can replace you for. You're not going to be 6'6".
Yeah.
You're not going to be 380 pounds. You may be 6'1", and you may be really, really good. But also, there's going to be possibly some, you damn sure well, I'm going to be working on the NIL money. When it comes in, I'm going to be going. But I said, but it's for you. I don't want any of it.
Right.
But you're right. No, and it goes back to that Dave Ramsey thing. It's like, I think the school systems and the sports, they stick with the can.
Yeah.
But it's more we can't. Where it's like, I can't do that because that costs money. Or we can't do this because we're fine. And it's like, no. Now reverse that. No, should we? Yes. We should. Prime example this year for James Clemens, Bob Jones. My brain is it fires on 15 million cylinders all the time. I'm constantly thinking.
Yeah.
And I was like, have they ever done like a parachute person jumping into a game before here? I mean, we're right next to a military base. And they're like, no, we can't do that.
Sure,
it's a no-fly zone. I'm like, no. So I start researching it. And I'm calling people, and I call a Skydive Alabama in Birmingham, and I'm like, hey man, is this something you can do? Well, I don't know, we've talked about that. Let's research it or whatever. And I mean, it was just me going after it. I didn't have $1 to do anything, but it was like, let's just, why not? Let's see if it happens.
Just ask.
And so the Skydive Alabama guy goes, we'll do it. I was like, well, how much is it going to cost? Probably. I said, okay, just tell me, are you available? And what we need to do and what I need to make up and the differences and all that kind of stuff. Well, then it was just like this. Talk to the girl from Katie, that's one of the marketing people from Chick-fil-A. And she's like, hey, we did like a cow drop from a helicopter. And I'm like, cool. I was like, can that helicopter guy, could somebody jump out of that helicopter?
Yeah.
And they're like, I think they could. And they were down. So for the James Clemens Bob Jones game, it was a James Clemens home game. And part of it for me was like, okay, I'm going to really up this rivalry here a little bit, because I've heard that, Bob Jones had always dominated. Now James Clemens kind of came back or whatever, but it's still, there's that old Bob Jones blood. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to tick these people off, because the guy's going to jump with a James Clemens flag.
There you go.
And throw the gauntlet down, the challenge, because it's like,
because they basically played at the Madison City Stadium, which is kind of a neutral site in a way for both teams.
Right.
So obviously one's home and one's away, but you're also at the same stadium.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool.
So we did it, and they flew in, and I don't know, people had talked about it. But then I went, I'd already had it kind of with Chick-fil-A. I was like, look, we all do this next year for Bob Jones too.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, 100%. We're going to do that. And I said, I'll help. Like, because it's me. It's like you said, it's the experience, because you've been to the sporting events, the little high school football game. I think people left that going, they're blown away.
Yeah.
Like, no, this happens at Alabama or whatever. I'm like on the mic, going, hey guys, we're about 60 seconds away from the delivery of the game ball, which is coming from, from the sky, paratroopers, and people are like,
What?
You're like,
What?
Yeah, yeah.
You hear like a buzz going through the stadium.
Yeah, and it was so fun. I mean, there were so many little technical things with that store. We had a kid that was running one of the drones that would film the games.
Yeah.
And he'd flown the drone up. And we're like, no, get the drone down. He's coming in a parachute. We can't have, a guy crash and die in the middle of the football game. Or but, those little things.
But, that's what I wanted to mention to you, and I think this is a good time to insert this in. So at that stadium now you have the second and third graders and the fourth graders, right? And if it's anything like when I think it's the same. The middle school kids are just playing football. They're all together. They're really not watching the game, but it's a chance for friends to get together and be social. And there's all these like side games that go on. And I didn't realize this till I used to do a coach's show as part of my play-by-play. I would interview the coach once a week to get a bunch of material and talk about the players and that kind of stuff. And he made a comment to me once because when we went down to Salem, Virginia, we got our butts kicked every time. And he said the difference is that's an institution down there. Those kids buy in second and third grade. And the high school does a great job of going down, and the coach will come to the ankle biter, what we call an ankle biter, or the smallest kids in youth football, and get them excited. One day you're going to play for Salem High School, right? Are you in? Yeah. And their program is like 300 pages. Like everybody's in on it.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time to produce a program like that. Every kid better be benching over 300 pounds.
Right.
45 kids on the roster.
Yeah.
You could be a punter and you're benching 300. So everyone's in on the strength and conditioning, and every year they don't win state every year, but they're usually maybe have one loss. Most times they're undefeated. They're always in the mix.
Yeah. And
the only way you do that is you build the whole city and the whole town. And I think that's just gestures like that where you go next level and you show commitment, right? And to kind of, but then the goal is how do you repeat that?
Right.
Year upon year.
Because when Timothy graduates, who's going to do it next? Or am I going to have to stay and?
But you've at least now the secret's out in a way, right? Or the possibility has been unleashed, where other people might say, well, and if they went and talked to you, hey, how'd you pull that off? I just made some calls.
Right.
And I got some people excited about it.
Yeah, I don't take no.
It's not that hard.
I don't take no for an answer.
Keep trying, right?
Yeah, I'm persistent.
So here's what I need to know. The origin of FreakDaddy.
Okay.
Where did that come from?
Okay. Back when I was growing up, there was a radio show in Lexington, Kentucky, morning show on a rock station called FreakDaddy and Sticky.
Okay.
And they were
that's great.
They were the funny name or whatever. Great show, pretty edgy. Probably back the 90s.
Like a Stern and
as local, but as they would be at the local clubs and all those kind of things. You'd hear the things you're like, oh, this is so scandalous. I can't believe it. So then when I went to college, I had a professor and he was like, hey, you need to have a name or something. You're either going to have to, your personality is going to have to pull it, or you need a name that always creates a question or a mystery kind of thing. So I did not do that in college. Really didn't pull that off. My radio career took a turn where I started out. I was a Christian radio station. So that was my first full-time radio gig, was a Christian radio station. Then went work for Dave Ramsey because I was always looking for that way to make more money and do that stuff. Went to work for Dave Ramsey, then went to Phoenix and was doing talk radio, like a sports director of a talk radio station right in 2000 to 2002, 2003. Never used it. But when I came to Huntsville, it was this thing we talked about, like constantly having to evolve and to do the whole thing. So when I got to Huntsville, they'd hired me in, but there wasn't the money that they said was here. And the gaping hole that I found was, you got a rock station and you're not at the clubs. There's none of that. The Jimbo was there. Jimbo wasn't going to be the guy that was going to be out the bars at night or whatever. There was a female that we had. She didn't really want to do it. And then our nighttime jock was the son of the owner of the radio station. And he was 15 or 16 years old. So he couldn't even go into the places. Right. So when I got there, I was like, okay, because bars would always have to pay in advance, had to pay cash. So I'd get paid right away. So I went to every but the thing was there wasn't anybody to do it. So I had went and I said, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to take the Freak Daddy name.
Because you had remembered Freak Daddy and Sticky.
That's what I knew. And I was like, I don't know what kind of name. And I wanted to keep myself separate.
Was that guy like dead and gone? And
no, he's still in Lexington, but he's not doesn't do a radio show anymore. Okay. But it was funny because with Huntsville being a transient town of people moving in, there were several people that had came from Lexington and never had seen the original Freak Daddy, and they were like, hey, you're from Kentucky, and was that you, man? I listened to you. I'm like, no, it wasn't me. I stole the name, but nobody knows here or whatever. And like that, I was able to get into bars and do all that. And it was that they would want to meet me, and their perception was I was going to be completely tatted up. I was going to be the guy that every time you saw him, he was, had some kind of drink or drug in his hands. He was, party, and they'd look and they go,
you're like the antithesis of.
Yeah. I remember one time going to a church and someone was like, how are you in church? And I'm like, because of my name? Like, really? Is that what's kept me out of church? I was like, I'm actually a dad, like I'm.
Yeah. I was Clay.
Yeah, right. So, but that was always a good thing too, that when the radio side, to be able to split it up and have the friends and the people outside of it. If you were my friend, you knew my name was Clay.
Yeah.
If you weren't my friend, you may like me and we knew each other, but if you just knew Freak Daddy, then that you didn't break into the inner circle.
Did you ever, with your middle name being Sanders and of course the whole Colonel Sanders thing, but were there any other monikers or nicknames that you toyed with, and maybe even playing off the Colonel Sanders thing before you chose Freak Daddy?
I did in Phoenix.
Did you?
So when I went out to work at Phoenix, it was a talk radio station out there, and they needed a sports director, and I was like, single guy. You move into the Phoenix market, it was like this is the dream of all dreams, which was kind of, we talk about getting behind the scenes, and when you get behind the scenes, it's not as glamorous as you thought it was, But Phoenix had the Cactus League, so you had all the baseball teams, had the A's and Cubs and Angels and all those baseball, because I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan, being there, in Kentucky. So you had those, and then you had the WNBA, which was popular there in Phoenix. You had the Phoenix Suns. You had the Arizona Diamondbacks that had just started, but made it to the World Series in 2001. So I got to be a part of that.
Yeah.
You had the Coyotes that was there. You had the Arizona Rattlers. I mean, so it was a sports town.
Sure.
So I had so that was the funny thing. I never thought I had an accent until I went there. Mm-hmm. And I remember,
the boy, you talk funny.
Oh my gosh, I had people so many times that would come up to me and go, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Is it that bad?" But compared to them, so I went with the Colonel Clay Sanders. Sports kind of played the whole thing, played off the Kentucky thing because of the same thing. I didn't feel like I had the chops or the personality to really pull it off, so I had to create someone else, But I totally played off that being from Kentucky, and which I think at some point in my family, I think we are kind of kin to him, but that's everybody in Kentucky.
Oh, really?
So that's how that works out. When I came here, did the Freak Daddy thing, then tried to transition a little bit I went with Clay Sanders on the Rocket for a little while. And then it was like, nah, man, they know you as Freak Daddy. And I kept it with the Havoc and the Tennessee Valley Vipers, the arena football team that we had here. So that was kind of and honestly, that stuff made my radio career bigger because they saw me. They got to meet me. So I became I was the voice on the radio, but now I became bigger. Yeah. And that was my secret, where a lot of times I was like, I'm beating some of these radio guys, which I shouldn't be, but I'm the man about town. I'm the guy. My ex-wife probably didn't like this, and probably my liver doesn't like this, but one of my guys that I worked with that was at the radio station was like, you want to be the guy that everybody wants to drink with you. And that happened for a lot. So I don't drink as much as I used to, but I mean, some of those days it was a party hardy kind of thing, but it helped me because I was able to, parlay, hey, this guy's just a good dude. Let's listen to him. He's funny. Yeah. He's that's kind of how my radio career here took off.
The Tennessee Valley Vipers, did they play in the Probst Arena?
Yes.
Okay.
They did.
Was that a pretty tight fit in there?
No, it was good. I mean, it was arena football was always an interesting thing. For me, it had that allure, kind of like the XFL and all these ones where it was like, oh, it's a different football, and this was arena 2, So the Arena 1 came out, and there was some kind of breakup between the owner of Arena 1. So they were
Move your mic up just a little bit.
Sorry.
Just push the boom up. There you go. Now you're good. Okay.
Okay. Let me start off like
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah.
But no, there was the Arena 1, but there was some kind of conflict with the owner of Arena 1, so they couldn't do certain things, so it became Arena 2. But they were doing it. But it was, I think, arena football. Some areas worked. I don't think football outside of Alabama and Auburn works here.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the brand is too strong. Like people said, oh, would it be cool if we had a pro team? Not going to happen. The monster is too big for that kind of thing. But they did really well. They won a championship, and I enjoyed that. It was kind of the first little bit of I did that and the Havoc at the same time. So I kind of had the market for.
Oh, you were doing the
I was doing the in-arena announcing
field?
As well. Yeah,
Okay.
So it was fun, and for me, it was I could take my kids to those kind of things, and I enjoyed sports, and it was a free way to come in. It did really well. I mean, they won, and then it was the ugly side of minor league sports where, you can't cut corners, and I think that here locally, just to let things that involve the Huntsville Stars eventually cut corners. They built the brand, and I think minor league baseball has struggled with this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The Trash Pandas, I'm rooting for them. I don't want anybody to fail or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and
like cutting corners on quality of concessions and things like that.
Well, they do. Well, for instance, like at the Joe Davis, the Jumbotron wasn't working, so they just didn't fix it. So you'd go there wasn't any music. There, they lost the experience. The owner really wasn't investing more in it. You'd go to. I remember going there one time because I just wanted to see. I like baseball. I took Timothy to a Father's Day game and had no idea. I'm like, oh, cool. We're gonna go sit right behind home plate. I bought 2 tickets, went in, and there was no cover above that area there. So I was like, man, how's there seats like below right behind home plate? This is nuts. Well, the reason why is because the Alabama sun was hitting those seats so hot that the plastic was melting, and we had to move. Yeah. But they didn't invest back into the program. Yeah. And like with the Havoc, the reason why the Havoc has been so successful, and I kind of like working for the Havoc because we've been the underdog. There was arena football. People understand football. Everybody always talks about the Stars. When the Trash Pandas came in, it was like, ooh, the new shiny thing, new toy or whatever. We're like, we're knocking it out of the park over here. Y'all can do what you want to do. You got, and I'm like, I don't even want to deal with the marketing that you guys have to do. I mean, we got 28 games. It's hard. I couldn't imagine
68
and figuring out a way to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, they'd come to me. Yeah. People were asking me, like, do you want to do the announcing for the Trash Pandas? And part of me was like, it'd be kind of cool just to say that I did it. But then I'm like, no, my wife would divorce me.
Every day.
Because I can't wrangle my kids. I mean, we do one family thing a month. I mean, it's hard to think that we would have to do 6 straight. They do a great job. They've done really, really well. Yeah. My advice to them would be the shiny bait's going to wear off. The nude, it's like at a marriage. You're going to get that. It's not as, we're not as fit as we were before, and you got to stay in it, and you just can't get lazy with it and not really take care of it. I think with the Havoc, prime example, you saw it when you came the other night, constantly wanting to get better. They did the projections with the intros and stuff on the ice, which has never been done. It cost a significant amount of money. They had signed a contract for just 3 games. Right. But it was so cool. And the buzz was just like, wow, this is like, just like we went to the Predators. And
you've never done the starting lineup announcements?
No, I've done the starting lineup, but they actually on the ice, the projection on the ice.
Okay.
That they did, they've never done that. Well, now they're doing it every game.
It was great. I'll just tell the listeners, you were kind enough to let me sit in your seats. As I'm sitting there, this is not a complaint at all, but they have like the blow up tunnel thing, and it's kind of like pressing on me. And I just told my wife, like, I'm not going anywhere for a few minutes. I figured like about 10 minutes, they're trying to blow air in it, and it's just kind of like, it's getting me. And that's fine. I'm kind of like, well, I'm good. I'll stay right here.
It's not the whole game.
No, it was fine.
Because then it would be very uncomfortable. But, the Havoc have constantly evolved and constantly like not been content with, hey, we got to make the experience. Sometimes almost to a fault. Like I tell them that I'm turning into the old fuddy-duddy that, well, well, this is how we used to do it, and y'all need to stay. But I'm like, don't lose this. Don't lose the core. There's this core thing that's I've been with the team for 17 years. Like, there's a core common thread that for the 17 years that we've always done.
Mm-hmm.
Don't change that. You got to still have the heartbeat. There was a charities that the Havoc works with, and all the different jerseys and all the different things that they do, and everything like that. They've raised more than $1 million for local charities, whether it's the Melissa George Foundation, Still Serving Veterans, or St. Jude, and it's always evolved and been natural. And the Melissa George situation, it's Amy George, she was a TV anchor on Channel 19.
Oh, really?
And Chris was a hockey player that played for the Channel Cats, which was the big team that was here before the Havoc. They had a daughter, 2 daughters, twins, and went into, at that time, the NICU wasn't that, they lost a daughter. So I could get them on your podcast. That would be a great one, because they have taken a complete tragedy in their life, and now it's a legacy for their daughter. But raised every giraffe bed in the Huntsville Hospital NICU is because of the Huntsville Havoc fans.
Really?
It's unbelievable. I almost look at the Havoc. It's like, we're not even really a hockey team. We're like this nonprofit that just gives back to the community. But that's always been the thing. And some of it's hard. Like one of the hardest things that I ever had to do, we had our St. Jude night. We did a paint with the Havoc. We had St. Jude kids come in, cancer kids, and come in and paint pictures at one of those little, wine type play. We didn't have wine with those kids, but they were just, paint with the Havoc. Yeah. And there was a little girl, Sydney Cunningham, and a young African-American girl, comes in, knew nothing about hockey, didn't think like that, but she ended up meeting one of our core players, Tyler Piancentini.
He's the captain, right?
Yeah, the captain of the team. Tyler's, I'm telling him, he's probably all of maybe 5 foot tall.
He's he's my height. I think they list him at 5'4".
So Sydney comes in to paint with Tyler because she's like, she got there first. Yeah. She goes, I want to paint with the best. And I'm like, let me introduce you to Tyler. And she's like looking, and she's like 5'1". And she's like, how tall are you? And he's like, 5'1". And she goes, no, you're not, because I'm 5'1" and you're shorter than me. And she's like 13, just a spunky kid.
Yeah.
So she was like, hey, we're going to come, make sure you come to the Havoc game. Mm-hmm. Never been. She's like, well, I want to walk on a red carpet. And I'm like, Sydney, we will have you a red carpet that night. And I was just like, I just connected with her. Yeah. The night of the St. Jude night, she's not there. She dies.
Oh, no.
And like, I'm connected, and our fans were connected and all these things or whatever. And then so it's like this process of, raising money. And then the next year, Tyler had painted a picture with her, and a lady had bought Sydney and Tyler's picture. They did like an auction to raise money for St. Jude. And we found out, and the lady's like, I want to give her picture back. And I'm like, how cool is this? Just the little organic things that were happening. And I'm like, Tyler, hey, we need to go to their house. And I'm like, I know it's hard. You're a minor league hockey player. And this is probably getting way deeper than you ever would have thought. I was like, well, this is a life moment here. And he was like, no, man, he's a good dude. Like, all the hockey players are good guys, but he's like, I want to go. And so we went. We presented the picture to her. It was emotional and crying. And then I was like, hey, and this next year, we want you and your family, if you will. I was like, I think somebody from your family still needs to walk out on that red carpet. And it was just the coolest life. Like, it had nothing to do with hockey. Yeah. And then I was kind of, one of the things, I love breaking down stereotypes. I hate stereotypes with, all of it. Yeah. And like the number one thing was like, hockey's not really big in the African-American community. And I was like, but the hockey people are really amazing people. So getting them, and they're super fans now. They're just like, hey man, this is amazing. This is great. And I'm like, but we were able to give them a jersey and do that kind of stuff. Still stay in contact with them on Facebook. But yeah, that was all the stuff with the Havoc, all these things. That's what I think really, between the people that move from out of town that get here and they're, they come from Virginia and they're like, God, I hate Alabama. I hate Alabama football. I hate everything about it. It's, this is, backwood, redneck, blah, blah, blah.
There's no professional sports.
Right. Oh, but they got hockey. Okay, cool. So it really, that thing made it easy for that. So that's grown, but I really think it's really this cool community. Like, we'll do the jersey auctions, and like, I still it cracks me up. I've had a jersey go for as much as $4,000 before. My
Wow.
jersey,
Really?
but it's going to a charity.
The
so it has-
FreakDaddy jersey.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like like $4,000, and you're just like, this is crazy. I'm like, part of me is like, hey, can I get these made and then sell them? But it's always for the charity, so it's going to that. But I would say probably, I did the math the other day. Like in the 17 years, we probably auctioned off like 13 jerseys. My jerseys probably never went below like $400.
Yeah.
So I mean, over thousands and thousands of dollars that have went to local charities just because I'm wearing a jersey.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Like Predators would come down to us and say, PK Subban his jersey didn't go for this kid in Huntsville, Alabama. Like, how does that work? But like I said, that's the whole dynamic. And I hope, like I said, the Trash Pandas, even the soccer team that's coming in. I mean, if you really want to be successful, the product is not going to be, as far as the baseball or soccer or whatever, you're going to have to really connect with the fans.
Yeah, this is this is what I thought would happen, and now that I've been here a year, okay, that light's still on. This is what I told Ricky in my episode 1. I said, I had never been to a minor league game, because we had professional sports in DC, right? We had minor league teams, of course, but we had pro teams, so that's what we did. So here I come here. I'm like, okay, Tuscaloosa is not Huntsville, right? It's far away. Auburn's kind of far away. So yes, even though it's a football state, for what's in Huntsville, you have minor league sports. Okay. But it's more about, as people, we want to go to concerts. We want to go to live entertainment. We want to do things. When people say, well, what's there to do somewhere? That's something to do, to go to an arena in the winter and watch, the Ice Capades or Disney on Ice, or whatever it is. And then, or the Harlem Globetrotters. There's just activities. And then you have a baseball stadium, or you have a soccer stadium. So now you're like, okay, it's not really about minor league. I'm not a fan of just the minor leagues, and I'm following the players around and living and dying by that. But I do enjoy sports. I somewhat need to kind of enjoy baseball or enjoy hockey or enjoy soccer if I'm going to go to a game. But it really comes down to, am I entertained? Yeah. And, is the food decent and such that you would want to come back? It's a decent price, and it's not like in pro sports, I'm out. I cannot pay $400 to go to a Redskins Now Commanders game or a Capitals game. Like, you got to be kidding me.
It's nuts.
Where it's $80 to park at FedEx Field. $80. It's
crazy.
Get out of here. Or even the Nationals. Some days it's $20, and then some days it's $100 to park. Yeah. Because they're going to get you. And so, and now that I've been to Havoc games, I've been to Toyota Field, both are doing, I think you guys do a phenomenal job with the in-game experience. Uh-huh. And you kind of I see kids they're just running around. Right. Hey, Dad, take me to the Havoc game. And it's not like they're sitting there and they're studying, the play. Their friends are there. Yeah. And it's something for them to do, or it's a fun night. It's space night, which was last Friday night. And, people learned about some of the, NASA came in, right, and had some tables, and people learned some things about some of the different programs. And I think that's where you're absolutely right. And when people come here, like, okay, how do we entertain these people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about, you're doing a podcast. Like, you always think about what topic, what type of, thing that you need to do. With hockey, I can't remember the guy's name that came in. We were at one conference or whatever that was just talking about to make it better. He said people only want to do two things. They're either celebrating or medicating. And sometimes they do both at the same time. But you have to, and like I said, you have to look at your core audience. Like with radio, you had to do the same thing. It didn't matter what song I liked or whatever. It was, what do they like?
Because guess what? Actually, I don't like soccer. And I will say most people in the U.S., right? We're not really soccer people. Of course, I'm excited when they go to the Olympics, and this is the tribal part of the nature of us, where, hey, I'm pro U.S. when it's in the Olympics, no matter what the sport is. Yeah. But then, then all of a sudden I don't care. I don't care. I'm not watching the MLS. However, I guarantee you I'll go. Yeah. And I'll support them, because I want to support local. Right. I want to support our teams. I want to have pride. I want additional levels of pride in living in Huntsville, in greater Huntsville area. And I'll go support them.
I will go until they fake the fall. Can't do that. The man side, when I watch soccer and the guy doesn't even get hit, and he's like, you know, takes the big fall like a WWE fall. I just can't do that.
I'll tell you what I want to do. I'm going to plug in. I need to plug in the audio.
Okay.
And I've got some things prepared now. We're going to switch over to the computer,
Sure.
but I've got to plug the audio in.
Okay.
So, Freak Daddy, we're going to switch over now to. I've got several pictures and some video clips prepared.
Okay.
And one of them is, now remind me how to pronounce Tyler's last name again.
Tyler Piancentini.
Piancentini.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 4 or 14?
14.
14. Okay, so here, this was 2 years ago, I believe. There's a clip of a young man. I'm going to show it to you in a second.
Okay.
Who is now was a hockey player that was paralyzed.
Okay.
And he is going to introduce. He is in this clip going to announce who the captain is of the Huntsville Havoc.
Okay.
Okay. So here we go. If you've seen this, maybe you haven't seen it, but here we go.
Players, coaches, staff, and fans. My name is Matt Brown. I've been lucky enough to follow one of your players from his time in the Bay State League, the 4 years he spent playing for the Norwich Cadets, and now most recently, the last couple of years he's played for you guys in the SPHL. Throughout it all, I've been amazed by his grit, his determination, his hard work that he puts in on and off the ice, day in and day out, and he is truly a leader in every sense of the word. So, having said all that, it is my honor and privilege to let you know that the next captain of the Huntsville Havoc is Tyler Piancentini. Congratulations, Tyler. Your assistant captains this year are Cy Nikovic and Nolan Kaiser. Good luck, boys. We'll be following you, and we'll be rooting for you. Go Havoc.
I tell you, that's I think kind of indicative of what you were talking about, right? Where it's more than just a hockey.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar at all with what went down there and this young man. I figured I'd just kind of surprise you with it and see if you could comment on it.
Yeah, I don't know all the details, but I do know that he is paralyzed because he was playing against Tyler and they hit, and Tyler was fine, and then that young man was paralyzed. And they have stayed in touch, and in a horrible situation to where one guy's hockey career ends and then Tyler's continues on. They've still stayed connected.
Wow.
Whatever. And he's been to a Havoc game, and his parents have come up, and he's got a book and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a cool story of that, where you're just like, how do you go that where two dreams, one dream gets completely crushed, and then the other one continues on. I mean, in the minor league sports, it's still not. But I mean, he came down from South Weymouth, Massachusetts, where they're from, and it was just a cool story that hey, that's a tragedy that you would think there would be so much bitterness and hatred, and he's a motivational speaker and got a book and that kind of stuff. So someone took a tragic story and turned it. But yeah, no, that was, I remember that when that happened, I know that it was the Piancentinis are just awesome people. And I was like, I know that's got to be probably in Tyler's world. That was probably the most touching way they could have thought to ever deliver that he was going to be the captain.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
it really is.
And that's what I love about sports. I mean, that's the one thing I think that with sports, I know it's I don't want to be, you can't be sexist and say it's just a man thing, kind of, but to me, all my whole life, all the cool sports stories, the things that I've always enjoyed watching the most were not the games. It was always the stories behind the games, or it was the fan that got to meet their favorite player or whatever. And that's stuff I do with the Havoc all the time. Like when I find a kid or a young kid or whatever that I know that's coming, this may be the only pro sport they ever see. Like you coming from the opposite side, where you're coming from DC and you have all this stuff. There's probably a kid from Arab that he probably hadn't been to Nashville. I mean, you don't want to judge anyone on that kind of thing, but there's still people like this. They're going to town.
Yeah.
That's only Huntsville's the only experience they have to a big city. We're going to the city.
That story just reminded me a little bit of the DeMar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills guy, right? And then at some point, I remember seeing something saying, "Well, wait a minute. What about let's also remember the guy that was the receiver that put his shoulder into him, and how does he feel, and how is he dealing with this? That'll be interesting to see if they ultimately what happens with DeMar. Is he going to return to playing or not? But that's had a huge effect on. I can't remember his name. I think it was number 85 for the Bengals.
It was
big receiver.
I'll say when Higgins, T Higgins, is that who it was?
It might have
I
been.
think that's who it was. Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens, and if that's something that is just kind of brings them together, right? Where it's not just about football.
Yeah, and I think with sports, a lot of times that's like we said earlier. You want to celebrate, you want to medicate, and I think for sports and really anything you do, hobby or whatever, it's an escape.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to whatever's going on. Hopefully your life's going great and you're celebrating and everything's great, but a lot of times, I don't know the exact percentage, but I would say probably 70% of life kind of sucks sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, it's tough. And it's kid issues, or it's family issues, it's job issues, all these things.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me, sports was that way to kind of escape and get out of it. That's what a lot of the stuff where the sports world's kind of turned more political and that kind of stuff I've hated, because I'm just like, no, that's not. I want to get away from all that stuff. I want a real life. You're the guy that I'm 5'9" and too heavy. I could never do that. But man, I want to watch you and you go through, and then you still see those individuals that kind of respect the process and realize where they've gone and where they've come from and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've always liked to me the fascinating parts of sports is just the human nature element of sports is always. But I think even my radio career, it was the same way. Like that's what I wanted to tap into. I wanted to tap into the human side of things. I was very real on the radio. I'm very, with the Havoc, I want to make sure I get plugged in and get to know these people and not just. It's not a job. It's like, this is my life. I've been with the hockey team for 17 years. I haven't had a job that's lasted that long or a marriage. So I got to, so hockey's been good. But I've always, the owner, Keith Jeffries, I've told him, I was like, I'm still doing this because I want to make sure that this stuff still gets done. You
always hope that a professional athlete, are they going to bring that same level of passion so that no matter what the sport is, they can't wait.
Right.
And they feel just so grateful that they have the chance to play the sport that they love. And I was kind of thinking, just going to the game the other night and sitting in your seats, and just anytime you get low and close to the action, I'm feeling excited. And I'm thinking, man, you've been doing this 17 years, but I guarantee you that you have some level of rush and excitement every single time.
Every game.
And it never really feels like just some job. No, otherwise you can do something else with your time. But you do it because even selfishly, there has to be some level of just adrenaline that's addictive.
Right.
Right. Where it's showtime, and you're not, and it's not just stroking your ego.
Right.
It's not just an ego thing. It's just I love what happens when an environment kind of comes together like that. And yes, all eyes are on you, while you're out there, and all eyes are going to be on the different players, but just to put yourself into that scenario, in those situations, I mean, it just gets you going.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to be a VIP.
Right.
No matter who you are. You at any level. And like when I do this stuff, I really feel like that, in a sense, it's like I get to be the VIP. Where you just feel good. Where it's like, but like I said, it's all these cheesy sayings you have, it's with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing, the superhero thing, where it's like I've always, never taken that for granted. And any platform that I've ever had, has there been times where I've strayed off and done some stupid things and not really handled myself the way that I should have 100%, and probably still will.
Right.
But I always want to be like, hey, how do we take this and make it cool?
Yeah.
How do we how do we always make it better? But no, every time I'm nervous, there is no rush like, going out there and basically saying something and everyone responds to you. I mean, it's a cool thing. But yeah, it's fun. But like I said, I love to do that too, where I'll walk up to a kid and be like, hey, you ready? I want you to say go Havoc. And I'll put the microphone on. And sometimes it can be the most random, and they'll do go Havoc. They lose their mind. Yeah. Or I'll take a kid.
Did you hear me? I was on the mic.
Absolutely. Well, that was the thing, like with radio. You talked about, we've talked about different things with radio that I got so disappointed in, is that where radio went to a situation, like I said, all my radio buddies are going to get mad at me, but it got to the point where it's like, God, we don't take requests. If they call in, you just say, I'll see what I can do. Mm-hmm. Well, on the other end, there's that person that's sitting there going, but man, I wanted to hear that Bon Jovi song. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, some of them are annoying, and you're like, gosh, if I played it 45 times for you. But I remember as a kid, I mean, it was a game changer. Like I used radio to my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had girls I was dating. I knew the radio guy at the top 40 station, and I would call and go, "Hey, my girl's listening. Is there any way I can give her a shout out?" Game changer, deal closer. I mean, it was so cool. And I've looked at radio back to the should you, can you or should you? Radio was the original social media.
Yeah.
It was the original platform to be able to give someone a voice or to do something. And radio went away from that. And I've even talked, I won't call their names out, but I've talked to several people in this community that are on the radio right now. And I'm like, man, screw the national corporate stuff.
Yeah.
Get on there and get where people can talk again. Let them be able to hear their, kids aren't engaged. They're not going to listen to music anymore because you can't go on Spotify and give a shout out to your girlfriend. You can't go on and you get to say something. That's why I think talk radio and sports talk and news talk are still so popular. Yeah. It's because people want to get on and talk. People want to, I want my moment. Yeah. And I think that's what I've loved with, the hockey and that kind of stuff is that everybody wants to be a VIP. Everybody wants that opportunity to show out and feel important, no matter what level they are.
All right. I have a clip here from February 14th. 2010. Okay, it's a post-game interview. Okay. And
look at that's fat FreakDaddy right there.
Yeah, let's listen to it. I apologize for a little bit of a static.
Fine. That's good.
But hopefully it'll come through okay.
I know like for the last week it's been kind of tense. I know I'm talking to some of you guys, and every time I talk, they're like, don't say anything. 7 in a row, 8 in a row, 9 in a row. The losses were coming. I know it was tough on you guys. It's got to feel good tonight. The energy was back. Getting a little fight in there as well. So, are we back? It's about time. Holy moly. I think we're back. It's just all aspects of the game are coming back to us. We're working hard and just, I don't know, everyone's on the same page. So, we're going to get a lot more wins now. We got Columbus coming here Tuesday night, so it's always fun to have them coming in. So hopefully you'll be ready for them. Oh yeah, you're going to see the same kind of game, just working hard in the corners, getting the puck out, and could be some fights. You never know. So give it up for Dennis Sicard.
That's a good Canadian right there.
Yeah, Dennis Sicard. He was the heavy. He was an enforcer.
Was he?
Yeah, and he was a fan favorite. The fun thing is he used to play for the Richmond Renegades.
Oh, really?
And he was a complete ass. And everybody hated him.
And then he comes and plays with us.
But he came to us, and it was like, and he actually went and I can't remember. You can look up Hockey DB to see the different teams he's went to. But yeah, he was a fan favorite.
Oh, actually, I do have it. Look at you. Look at that.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I wanted to show this because, wow, the life of a minor league hockey player, right? So that interview again was 2010, and that's when he was, they have 2011, 2012 Huntsville Havoc.
Yeah, the 9-10 season. Yeah, so that would have been the first part of.
Oh, that's right, 9-10, and then he went to Bloomington, and then came back later. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong area, but man, that's quite the jumping around and just the reality of this, and I think sometimes as people we have to step back though and consider, hey, what are these young men going through? Yeah, right. I mean, they're not getting a lot of money. They're doing something else throughout the year, but here's someone who it looks like it's way past just something he was doing in his 20s, something he wanted to continue to do, wanted to play hockey. He was probably never going to make it to the NHL.
And if you look down the one PIM column, that tells you why Dennis was the penalty minutes was his claim to fame.
Yeah, so that's
he would fight. Funny story about him, and my deal with hockey, I didn't really know a lot about hockey. And they threw me the wolves of interviewing these guys. And it's really hard for people that don't know. Like you can hear that in the arena, but when you're there talking to them, it's hard because there's no in-ears and you don't know. So I remember the first interview I ever did, I asked Matt Carmichael, who was one of our goalies. And I just went out there and I asked him a question. I knew nothing about hockey. In front of the whole crowd, he looks at me and goes, I have no idea what the hell you just said. And I was like, okay, well, everybody make some noise for Matt. What a great night. But like Dennis was,
like the terminology was just off or something?
Yeah, who knows what I mean, I just didn't prep, didn't really know a lot about minor league, sports or whatever. But Dennis was just one of those guys where, man, you knew what to say. He knew what to say, and it was such a good vibe to be able to do that or whatever. But yeah, he was the penalty minute guy. He fought. It was one of the funniest stories, and I didn't understand hockey. because they're just like, they're crazy. I mean, it literally, I love them to death. They're some of the best human beings. If I were to be like in a foxhole and needed help, I want a Marine and a hockey player.
There
That's
you
who
go.
I want. That's who I want to be involved in. But like, he fought a guy from Knoxville, and Dennis had broke his jaw. Okay, you're supposed to wear the face guard if you have that, but he didn't, and his mouth was wired shut.
The other guy?
No, Dennis.
Oh wow. Okay.
So he's out there now. If you wear the mask, there's no fight. They're not gonna come after you, or whatever. But if you don't have the mask on, it's fair game. So he fights this guy, and I'm like, he's kind of damn broke jaw, like, and I know what they're making. You know, I mean, that's the thing. The hockey players would really get mad because I would really blow some dreams of some of these young women in Huntsville that are wanting to marry the minor league sports guys. Baseball, maybe. Hockey, not so much. But great guys. I would, if you're going to marry a hockey player would be one that I would find because they're the most loyal human beings on the planet. But I'm like, man, he's sitting there fighting this guy. And I've run over to get in the penalty box because I'm thinking that's sometimes the best stuff. When they got to have a fight, they're talking so much trash and everything. And the guy leans over and goes, hey, he goes, I knew you had the jaw, so that's why I hit you in the nose. So he literally strategically broke his nose now, but Dennis actually won the fight. But he didn't aim for the jaw. And I was like, this is crazy. They've got like this code that they stand by.
Yeah.
But it was just, and I'm like, man, for
you
what
were
y'all
telling
make-
me the other night when we were at the game that typically if that same team, if they're going to play consecutive nights, that by that second night, then tempers really flare. And there were some fights in that first game that we saw, the first game of two, right? We went Friday, then they came back Saturday.
And then it was just true to form. It spilled over, and that was, we won that game in 48 seconds. We were playing the marksman. We scored a goal in the last 48 seconds. We were down 2-0 and came back. The next night, we were down 2-0 and came back and scored 3 or 4 goals in the third period and won again. But no, same thing. Yeah, it spilled over because you got to think about it.
Sure.
That's the one thing I love about hockey. It's like you get to get away. It's kind of like baseball. I love the baseball side of, even though it's the most deadly thing you could possibly do.
Yeah.
But if somebody steps out of line, you get to throw that ball and hit somebody in the shoulder, or hopefully you don't aim for the head, but they get the opportunity to duck out of the way. To me, that's like, I like that.
Yeah.
And I love hockey where it's like, hey, you do something dirty,
So did you
I'm coming for you.
with this past weekend? Were you over there near the penalty box listening to them?
Oh no, they were chirping, and they had their goalie was doing the whole Hulk Hogan thing when they were winning or whatever, and then they just murdered him. I mean, it was great. It was just a great environment or whatever.
That's what makes sports so great.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it's the hockey stuff. I wish I could have played hockey, but we had lots of ice in northern Kentucky, but no, there was no skating. Roller skating rink was about as close as we got, but I would have loved to have played hockey.
Let's watch another clip.
Okay.
Here we go. I want you to let's watch. It's not very long here.
Havoc fans, another Fox 54 fantastic Friday. This Friday night is disco night. So come dressed in your disco gear and you can win prizes from the Havoc and your Fox 54. That's right. Yeah. The things that you will do.
Hold on, I'm watching it again. We're on a loop. There you go. Disco night. Oh, the things that they make you do.
Oh, well, and that was the thing.
They came to you and you're like, wait a minute, you want me to do what?
Well, but the funny thing was, if you really know me, the cheese, I ate it up. I would probably still do it today if my wife and them would be like, God, don't do that. There were so many. There's probably tons of videos like that out for the Fox 54. Like we promoted with them where they had our Friday nights, and that was the whole thing of going in and finding the unique thing. We did a Walking Dead night. We did a superhero night. We had, all kinds of fun.
Yeah.
But that was the stuff where it now became the entertainment side.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a little part of me that's like embarrassed when you do those things, but people talked about it.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, look, sacrifice. You take one for the team. My ego's not that big enough that I'm not gonna, not do the dance or do something on the commercial. But hey, they're gonna go, man, this FreakDaddy guy, he's a nut. Like he'll do anything.
Now, have there been plenty of bits that you came up with?
Yeah, during that time, like when we were, and I don't remember the dates exactly, but I mean when we were in that, going from the 3,000 people, 2,500 to getting the sellouts.
And it's what, 7,000 is a sellout?
Yes, about right around 7,000. That's where my radio career kind of parlayed into to hockey, because radio, you always had to come up with the gimmicky. We're giving away this car. We're giving away a new car, and 104 people get to try to start, but only one key starts.
Right.
It was all those little gimmicks, and then you had to be more creative as it went down because you didn't have the money. So I remember, I was at the Rocket one time, and we did a Texas Hold'em thing. We got a local car dealer to give us, it was like a Champion Chevrolet in Athens, that give us like $15,000. And we did like a Texas Hold'em on the radio where you had to listen it, for the first
for
3
your
cards.
hand.
And then, and then if you could call back and get the exact one, then you got $1,000 of that, money. And then, but that parlayed into the hockey where it was like, I don't care. One of my favorite ones that we did, we were doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle night. We saw there was a team, the Cincinnati Cyclones, had done it. And they did the Nickelodeon type characters that they brought in. And then they did a dollar pizza night, which they sold like 27,000 slices of pizza.
Wow.
So I was like, well, let's do a Ninja Turtle night. They got it. But in rare form, I'm like, I want to do it better. And they're like, well, how do you? So I just literally went online and looked up, and I was like,
that's like 3,000 pizzas. I'm just trying to do the math.
It's nuts. Yeah. So I, got online and was like, authentic 1980s Ninja Turtle costumes. So then I go, and then it kind of throws me to this dude out in California. And these are like, it's the real ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the real suits. So I get the phone number. I call. It's the guy that made the costumes for the movies.
Wow.
And he's using it in California and going and doing birthday parties and stuff like that. I'm like, hey,
can I borrow one?
I was like, how do I get you to come to Alabama? And he goes, can you get me to space camp? Or can you get my kid to space camp? And I'm like, hell yes, I can. Easily. I'm going to get you to space camp. So he's like, well, I can't get you actors. So I'm like, don't worry about it. We work with a company that had local people that did the mascots and stuff like that. So I was like, got that. So it was like $5,000 for this guy to ship us Michelangelo, Leonardo, the whole gang. And we literally, it was probably one of the best promotions that we had done. So we had the Ninja Turtles coming, you get to get pictures with them. There was so much hype for this. And like I said, this was the 1980s. This was Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go.
Yeah.
I mean, legit. I'll show you pictures after. I wish I would have had one to show you, but legit pictures. And we got there. We went on Channel 48 in the morning. These kids, it was just high school and college kids that were in the costumes for us. You're not supposed to stay like at Disney. You're not supposed to stay in the costume more like 15 minutes.
Yeah. They're
They're in it all day. We rode, went to Channel 48, did the newscast, and didn't care because we had the costumes. These were legit. Everybody wanted their picture with them. And they're riding around from place to place in my Chevy Tahoe and not taking the mask. I mean, it was ridiculous. They probably could have died.
Yeah.
But we went to the Channel 48 and they were driving around and people were like finding us on the interstate and trying to wave and figure out where we stopped at, like Bill Penny Toyota, sponsors. We went to Domino's, one of the Domino's over by I can't remember, Zert Road out that way. We had the Ninja Turtles actually in the drive-through line giving pizzas. It's just random people were pulling up and they're like, what the hell is going on? We went to the Space and Rocket Center with them. And I was like, I didn't call them, didn't say anything. We got out because they wanted the guy that wanted his kid to go to space camp. Because he flew out with us. He was like, I'm going to be there. I'll make sure you don't tear up the costumes and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, do we need to call him? I was like, dude, we're in the dang original Ninja Turtle costumes. I said, we can do whatever we want. And so we literally full-blown afternoon of the day of the game, walked right up to Space and Rocket Center, walked in, didn't pay for a ticket, didn't do anything, just went straight in. And all their like, what the
What's going on?
Hey, the Ninja Turtles. You'd be like, what the hell?
Just let them through.
I mean, they'd stop us.
Yeah.
And so we're walking through, and then finally their social media people are coming up and like, can we get pictures? Can we do? But I mean, it caused just shut down inside the Space and Rocket Center. But then that night we did the same thing. They came out and dropped the puck. They stood in line. People were standing in line for hours to get their picture taken with these costumes.
Man.
And then same thing. We sold 16,000 slices of Domino's pizza that night. And people were like, it was nuts. But that was an idea to where we just kind of came in and said, hey,
Yeah.
Here's how this goes. Let's just do cool things where it's like, what the hell? I mean, I think one night we did a wiener dog race, and we had the guys for the Hanson brothers from Slapshot were there.
Yeah.
And it just became this, and it was that twofold thing. People wanted to get there, but if they missed it and you did something so cool like that, they were like, you did what? They did,
Yeah.
oh man, we missed out. So it created the buzz and created this atmosphere. But no, yeah, it was me and Ashley Balch, Kevin Walker, and then Justin Strickland, and the original guys that we had that were in there. We would just sit around, the coaches, different assistant coaches, and we would just sit there at the lunch table and just brainstorm.
Yeah.
I think there was a book called Contagious. So I've never seen that book, but it was like, well, how do things go viral? And we actually sat around all as, hockey players and former radio guys, and wasn't going to read the book. So we had the audio tape. So we sat around the table and listened to it. But it's really good. Like I said, you should listen to it. It just talks about how
long ago was this?
That's what I can't remember the dates. If you looked on that Hockey DB for the Havoc,
yeah.
we could see the
Pull it
year. It was probably Glenn DeTulio's. He's been with the team over 10 years now.
Okay.
It was probably back, 10, 12 years ago where the corner changed, or we really turned the corner and coming up with those just crazy ideas. And like a military night would be the only night we'd sell out.
Yeah.
Then we went, I think the first year that we changed a lot of things, we had 7 sellouts. And it was like insane.
That's
like
awesome.
We were like, this is unreal, And
Let's do this. I'm going to change. I got the camera now on you. Let's go through some of the stuff you brought. I think you have some jerseys. You have some championship rings. Let's do some show and tell here.
Okay, so this was I'm trying to think. Make sure I get this right. This was the Alabama Hammers. Excuse me. That was another arena football team. The Tennessee Valley Vipers. This was 2008.
I'm going to zoom in. Here we go. Look at that.
I think there we go. So this is the big bling that is just completely over the top. So that was the first championship ring that I'd ever gotten
Okay.
before. And that was 2008. And then the Havoc, we went on our tear. 2010 was the Havoc year. And it was a little bit not as gaudy of a ring, but still pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year that we won, which would have been the 2006. No,
That's the biggest ring.
2018. No, this was the Havoc basically saying we want to be bigger than the arena team.
Okay.
So you can see it was kind of the same feel. So that was the 18, and then we won the back-to-back, and then this was the really cool one. I got this one. This one was just as big as the other one, but I noticed I wanted to be able to wear the rings, so I asked for a smaller version just because I wanted to be able to.
Yeah.
Because literally every time I'd wear the big, I called it the championship lug nut. It literally would hurt your hand.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's almost costing. And then people would be like, I'd wear it to church or whatever. And somebody go, do you play for Alabama? And I'm like, no, but it looks like one of those rings. So that was the 3 Havoc rings. And then which was kind of crazy. I played sports my whole life and never won anything.
Yeah.
But now my dad he would always say, you just run your mouth and you got stuff. Now the jerseys.
Yep. Here we go with the jerseys now.
I'll show some other ones. So this was one I thought was kind of a cool. This is the Rapid Solicitor Stingrays, which is funny. This is a European hull outside of London. This is a London.
Jeez.
So it's NASCAR'd up. You can see it's got all the stuff, but actually
that's exactly what I was going to say.
But the funny thing is their team name is the sponsor name. So, like, they'll say the Rapid Solicitor Stingrays.
Huh.
And this was kind of cool. So, a guy, Dominic Osmond, and they actually made me, had asked me, so I got the FreakDaddy jersey.
Now,
there.
59, was that just your number?
No. Well,
Okay.
the side story of that is I worked for 95.1. And so, when I worked for the Rocket, it was 95. So,
Okay.
you see, like, in one video, I think that you played earlier, there was a 95. When I got let go from the Rocket, I had all these jerseys that had 95 on them.
Okay.
A lot of money, bunch of kids. So it was the cheapest way to take the number off and reverse them.
Okay.
So everybody thought it was a slight towards Rocket 95.1. It's like, no, I'm just a cheapskate. So 59 was the way to recycle that. This is a team of the Federal League. I just like the logo. It's pretty sick. This is the Danbury Hat Tricks. A friend of mine, Billy McCreary, who played for the Havoc, is actually the general manager of that team now. So they sent me one that I had there. So those are the two that are just kind of like off. I've I've got tons, but then it went into like the. This is one of my favorite. My favorite superhero is Flash.
So is this something that you guys had to convince? Hey, we need to have more jerseys
Yes.
to create
'Cause
a
it'd be the
buzz
auction.
and appeal. And
Well, they'd be
and
the
auctioning.
auctions and then charities, which
Okay.
a lot of people do it, But this was like a superhero one, and this was one we did for St. Jude. So I was able to get, but it was just kind of a cool. The league partnered with DC and was able to do that.
Wow.
Then as we went, you had the DC, but we had to do Marvel. So back when Captain America was pretty popular or whatever, we had the Captain America jersey. And then the fans would buy these. And I said they buy them. It's crazy. Like I've seen as much as like $60,000 or $70,000 raised for like the hospital. But then I've kept or secretly would have them make a double because I'd have to always auction mine off.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have a double that I just wanted to keep. So I didn't tell too many people that, hey,
Yeah.
you don't
Make
have
two
the
of
one
them.
of a kind. Or two.
Right.
But this is my absolute favorite one because I am a huge Kiss fan.
Oh, look at that.
So this was the Kiss 40th, I think it's 40 years of Kiss, which is in the bottom there. And but
Wow.
the cool thing about that I loved about this is Gene Simmons actually tweeted about the jersey, and my jersey was on the tweet.
Really?
So it was just like, that's the coolest thing I've ever. But I was a huge Kiss fan.
Wow.
So, but I mean, just different things like that were the fun nights. But yeah, I think we do 13 or 14 different jersey auctions.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's ridiculous where you're just like, gosh, man, because I feel guilty. But like I said, sometimes my jerseys are still just me, and I'm not even playing for the team, will be $400 or $500, and people will be like,
You think that's just because but you're 17 years, you're kind of a staple.
Yeah.
Where the other, unfortunately, minor league hockey is what it is. They either go on to other leagues or they get traded or they go into the workforce or whatever it is, right? Where you're kind of like year upon year, what's consistent.
right. Well, there's the
with
mascot.
habit.
They have two mascots. Chaos is the first one,
Right.
and then me.
And you.
And then Ruckus came in after that. So I always tease them. I'm like, hey, there's 3 mascots for the Huntsville Havoc. One of them's a human, and that's me. But yeah, 17 years, and who knows? I've kind of joked about it, like just see what happens. 20 years may be a way to kind of tap out and let somebody else do it. But I've had tons of people that are just like, you've been with it so long.
Yeah.
You're kind of the face of inconsistent, like you said. I think it's just the consistency of it that they're like, you can't go. I'm like, at some point, 50-year-old or 60-year-old freak daddy cannot be doing minor league sports.
Let's do this. I want to do I have 8 questions for you.
Okay.
Normally I call it the quick 6.
Okay.
But this is some fun additional get to know Freak Daddy
Okay.
better questions, and
Okay.
I'll go with this camera,
Okay.
so I don't mess with it too much. All right, first, actually, oh man, I forgot to show. I have a picture where you were with Sinbad.
Mm-hmm.
It was at least one celebrity.
Yes.
It looks like you just took a lot of pictures when you interviewed them on the radio at different jobs, right? And that's a cool moment.
Right.
I was like, who's that? Oh, it's Sinbad.
Yeah.
Haven't heard from him in a long time, but give me a guest, and I don't even know if our audience even knows who Sinbad is at this point, but give me an idea of a guest that was supposed to come on, you were supposed to meet, you were supposed to interview, and it didn't pan out, and you're like, oh man, that sucks.
Trying to think of a good, because most of them actually that came through. I did have not in the radio world, but I did have an opportunity to meet Michael Jordan
Did you?
when I was a kid in high school, and went and bought a pair of Air Jordans. He was actually at the Lexington Bluegrass Games as the the head grand marshal of the parade and like the spokesperson for that year. And my athletic director from my high school gave me an opportunity to go meet him, and I went and bought with my own money a pair of Air Jordans to get him to autograph them. And when I met him, he was like, "Nah, kid, I'm just here to be the spokesperson," and didn't sign them. So
What
from
year? What year was it?
1992.
Okay.
So that was in the heyday of
Yeah.
everything. And I had my room was full of Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, and Brian Bosworth. That was my entire room,
Boom.
and I took every Michael Jordan
Boy.
poster down. I was so mad.
He didn't want to set a precedent and sign
Yeah.
yours and then have to sign everybody else.
Right. Which, yeah. And now that I know,
Yeah.
going through that, I was so young, but I'm like, if anybody ever asks me for my autograph, I'm going to get. I think the main thing is with I had people that would tell me that if it's somebody that you really, really like, don't meet him.
Because
It'll bust everything. There's a guy, and I'll just say his name out, the lead singer of Buck Cherry.
Oh, yeah.
I had a run-in with him at Sammy T's Music Hall. They had that song, Crazy Bitch. That was the most popular song that they had. He came, and we had a chance for listeners to meet him. And this probably one of the worst experiences I had on the radio side of things. Had a chance for him to meet 5 listeners, get their picture taken with them before the show and all that kind of stuff. This was in the height of that song. Crazy Bitch was number 1 in all radio. Comes out, kind of just really didn't want to do the meet and greet. His handler comes out and says, hey, he's going to do one picture. So all 5 winners just line up by the bus. He's going to come out and take a picture. He's not signing autographs. It's just one picture, and that's it. And I was the program director of the Rocket at the time, which I had control of the music. And I said, if he does that, I will pull the song tonight. I said, I won't stay and watch this show, and I'll go back to the radio station and I'll pull the song. And the guy's like, you can't pull. I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I said, I'll never play it again, ever. I was like, I got a photographer here. Use lineup. He's going to stand in one spot, and I'll boom, picture, boom, 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 get everybody out. He can sign something. They've got stuff that he can sign it. It'll take, this ain't like we're like sitting around for an hour and a question and answer thing or whatever. And I'll never forget, like, they did it. And so we get into Sammy T's, which was the bar. It is still in Huntsville, but it was more of a music bar, more so than a dance club bar. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, he got up on the stage and, like, popped off.
Really?
Like, I'm still there, and he still makes a comment, which it was stupid because, like, nobody had ever, done anything or whatever. And literally, I was like, that's it. So I went out and I said, hey, I'm not playing Crazy Bitch anymore till I get a public apology from him. And
never played it again.
No, but he had actually I ended up getting a message from him saying I'm sorry and I should have done that. It's just emotions and I'd been drinking and all this kind of stuff, whatever. But that was like I was so mad. I was like, I hate this band. I don't anything Buck Cherry I've done with them. I don't want him to.
Good for you.
To do that. But yeah, that'd be one where like it was an experience where it's kind of just a bad experience.
All right, here's the next one. One of your bucket list items is to call a Kentucky game.
Yes.
Basketball.
Yeah.
I keep looking over like that light goes out. So let's imagine it's, I don't know, 2027, and you're going to get that chance, and you're going to call the game. NCAA final.
Oh, good Lord.
And they're going to play, Duke. I don't know, Duke.
Duke.
I was going to go with Duke. Let's go Kentucky Duke.
Everybody hates Duke. Right.
Give me how you would do your opener. Your first 30 seconds or something.
Oh, wow.
God. I'm sure you had some sort of go-to, like you're looking live or here we are, but
you'd have to do the whole, welcome to Rupp Arena, the Bluegrass State, home of your Kentucky Wildcats. Like that'd probably be, I would eat that up. I would do it for free. It's like, I would enjoy it. Yeah, that'd be cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's the public address side, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, here's the next one.
Okay.
One thing that you want your boys to be proud of you for. What's the one thing as, let's say a number of years ago by, you pass on, and they're thinking about their dad.
Get me choked up.
What's something that you want them to be like, man, I want them to be proud that I did this or I did that?
I would say that I was always there. That would be like, there would never be a doubt that I wasn't there. Sorry.
It's all right. So they always say, right, no matter what you're doing, be there, right? If you're at work, you be at work. If you're at home, you be at home. If you go to sports, you're there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for me, because my dad was always there. My dad passed away 5 years ago, and it's like that's the way that I would live on. But like I said, I think there's so many kids and so many, I have to say it, but like so many piece of crap parents that are not there.
Yeah.
We see it. We'll go, not that there's anybody on our wrestling team, but I mean, you see it in the sports. You'll see it where there are kids there and they're like, can I get a ride? Why? Well, because my mom or so-and-so went there. I hate that. It makes me so mad. I get so, because I'm like, God, of all the things, why would you not? You birthed this human being. You were given the coolest opportunity ever in life, and you just can't show up.
Yeah.
Ever. I mean, there may be emergency situations, you know, where I got to work or I do this, but never. I remember my dad, he worked third shift, night shift, and he would always tell me before every football game, and he and I never got to talk about this my entire life, never even wanted to ask it, but he'd always say, hey, I'm not going to be able to be there tonight, but good luck. And every time I ran out of our tunnel, he was standing right there. And it was that little high of like, oh, he's here. Cool. Never asked him, why didn't you say you were going to make it? Like, why did you always leave it in a situation where, but like, so yeah, I would think, yeah, if I want my kids to wear, never a doubt. That, get me crying.
Last
now
night,
you turned into Oprah.
last night, was it last night? We had wrestling at Buckhorn, right? And I actually just want to go back on something I said, because sometimes I say things, you know, to people just to try to be funny. But, you know, we go there. It was kind of a weird day. I think I was explaining to you, I got to drop off my one son really, supposed to be really early, and they don't have practice. So I'm at work by like 5:50, which is fine. I'm used to that. But, you know, sometimes like selfishly, I could have slept more.
Right.
Then we go all the way out to Buckhorn. It's not that far. Right. But, you know, it's still.
In Alabama terms, it is.
Yeah. In Alabama terms, we go all the way out there. And then my son, there's 2 forfeitures. And, you know, I think 15 years ago, I probably would have been like really ticked off. Like, what a waste of my time. And even though I turned to you and said, oh man, there's all these other things I could have done with that time,
right. I
still wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And be with other parents, or be there to support the other kids. See your son, T-Bone, wins, beats a kid that had been his nemesis. Yeah. Right. And you had posted on Facebook, but I really didn't mean that. When I turned around and said that, I didn't really mean that.
No, I understand. Yeah.
But you know, and my wife and I got to just spend some time together.
Yeah.
We drove out there, and we went a different way on the way there. We went up kind of like through Meridianville, and because I'm still used to like the DC mentality of like traffic. There might be some traffic. Like, I still don't think it's gonna be that bad of a traffic, but I do like to go different ways. Yeah. To just to know that, okay, I know where this road goes and that road goes in case I ever do need to go that way. Right.
Alabama doesn't have traffic. Huntsville doesn't have traffic. It's mismanaged engineering of roads.
All right, let me ask you this question. Okay. If you could go back and say sorry, issue an apology to someone in life, who would that be?
If I could say I'm sorry.
Obviously, the Buck Cherry guy did the right thing and said sorry to you, but...
Oh, man, that's a good one.
Everything and ever gnaws on you?
That's a tough one. I'm not going to be a cop-out and say... Because, I mean, I'm really... Apologies are big for me. Like, I think whenever you screw up, you gotta man up and own it.
We can skip it. Come back to it.
Yeah, let me think on that one.
Okay.
That's a good one, man. You're good.
Favorite color?
Favorite color, blue.
Blue?
Straight up Kentucky blue. Right.
Like the Kentucky blue.
Kentucky blue, right.
I think blue is my favorite, and I love all the shades within it. I like Carolina blue. I like navy blue.
Yeah. Kentucky
Royal blue. Kentucky blue. All right. What is okay? Going back to your, it could be anyone in your family or your close friends. What is it that Freak Daddy, Clay Sanders Coleman, what is it you're good at? What do they know when they brag about you? Like, man, my dad. You know, oh, that's fine. Your dad's a good bowler. My dad can bowl. But like, you know, what is something that they know? Everybody knows, man. Clay's good at that.
Yeah, I would think, you know, maybe it's not the actual event that I'm good at. Like, I DJ. Mm-hmm. I'm not the best DJ. But no, I would say my work ethic probably.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not meaning, you know, definitely not in a cocky or an egotistical way, but I doubt there's any human being that I know of that will outwork me. Like, I'm not, there's no lazy in me. I mean, my hours that I will put in to do something is almost an obsession sometimes, like the workaholic type kind of thing. I have to find ways to unplug. But yeah, I would say that was I'm going to outlast you.
I think that comes from being one of 13. No, that's your father. Was one of 13 kids, but coming from Western Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Underdog.
Yeah, absolutely. And
earn everything you have is hard earned, right? Hard work.
Yeah. And I never had from the radio side, like people talk about, like my voice isn't the best voice. Like in that day, you had to have. Now you just had to be able to communicate it. Right. It didn't really have anything to do with the set of pipes. Back then, it was like, oh, you don't have the booming, hold your ear announcer voice. So, I never had that. So there was always that. I never got the real the host of a morning show.
Mhm.
I think because I just was never going to follow that line that they had to do, or I didn't. You have to have a certain ego to do those kind of things. I didn't have the ego to really push it. But did I
Gotcha.
want it? Absolutely. I'm not saying it's a cop out saying that just because I didn't have an ego, I couldn't done it. I mean, I wanted it, but I think I've got to do a lot more cool stuff than just that.
Give me one thing Huntsville doesn't have that you wish we had.
One thing that Huntsville has that we
Doesn't have.
Doesn't have.
Man,
I think we're getting a lot of
we're getting a lot of stuff, right?
stuff that we did that absolutely that we didn't have. A White Castle.
Okay.
That's
Those little burgers.
That's my drug of choice. If I get to Nashville, I want a White Castle. You can get them in the grocery stores, but they're just not the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your ideal day?
Whew, ideal day. That's gonna sound cheesy, but I mean, any time, especially now as I see it's, like at you, like your kid's a senior. Any second that I can get with my family, my wife, my mom, my kids, that if I can somehow get a good calm in my world, sometimes it may not be just because I'm around them, may not be the good thing. But yeah, like I've really, as I've gotten into life and I've seen how quick it is and how fast it goes by, like I'm literally almost like, Timothy would probably tell you, he'd probably say, yeah, I get tired of my dad's text messages and stuff like that because I'm always, but I just see how fast it goes. And I'm seeing friends of mine like yours or whatever, where you're just like, well, dang, it's
almost
they're
over.
Senior,
Yeah.
then they're going to, but then you got to be like, okay, there's so many more, hopefully grandkids and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think anything family right now, I'm just dialed in as much as I can.
Well, I'll tell you a little story that might make me cry, but I had kind of forgotten about this until the other night. So Jason's the only senior on the team, and the question was, my wife was asking me, was like, hey, is there going to be a senior night? I hadn't really thought about it, and he's the only senior, and with wrestling, I'm not even sure what the schedule is,
right?
Because it changes all the time, right? You might get invited to go to this duel or that duel or this tournament. And then I remembered that for football, my mom had a head injury. You'd have to listen to like episode 11. I talk about it a little bit. So her short-term memory was really bad. And just growing up, it was just her. My dad had a head injury, and they had been long divorced, never lived with them. And I was that guy that had to get rides from everybody because my mom just it's not like she didn't care, but she just was in a different state of mind, right? So I didn't really care if she came to my games because she also really wasn't like a mother to me. She was just kind of like a sister or a child. And so it didn't necessarily, I mean, I was always happy if family came, but I also didn't have that expectation. So you fast forward to my senior year, we had a good team. We had a really good team. It was just a great senior season. Senior night comes, and I said, hey, Mom, I need you to come to the game, and you're supposed to meet all the other parents at the locker room, and then you'll walk from the locker room through the parking lot to the south end zone, and I need you to be there at 7:05 to line up. I'm number 8. They're going to go in numerical order. Okay, and I drew our map. I mean, this is the high school I went to for 4 years that my sister went to, my brother went to, and she didn't know how to really even get there, right? And it's only a mile away.
Right.
So I drew a map, and like I went over and over with her. You know where to go in the senior parking lot, right? It's the last parking lot. Yeah, I'll be there. Okay. So then the night comes, and we go and we warm up. We go back to the locker room, and then we run out to the field, and we're like in the end zone gathered, and we start to kind of like line up, and I'm looking. I don't think she's there. And I'm looking like she's not there. And so I run out. I run, and Troy, bye,
Right.
And we probably had 25 seniors, maybe 30. So it was a good group. These are like my buddies, right? And that was like the one time I just wanted my mom to be there. And she wasn't there because she gets lost, even if it was a mile away. And to the school that your kids go to, she doesn't know how to navigate. And I was just crushed.
Yeah.
So the athletic director, and the thing was we had already given our helmets to the athletic director, and they had them at the midfield. So as the player ran on, then the parents would hand it to the player. Mom gives him a kiss, handshake for dad, hug for dad, whatever. And he's just like, I'm sorry, and I just started crying.
Yeah.
And I run to the sideline, and then one of the coaches was actually one of my teachers, and he just came over and he's like, every year someone gets hurt. I'm sorry it was you. I'm not saying they should change the ceremony, but it's tough to see, and I was like, it was awful.
Right.
And I hadn't thought about that till the other night when she was talking about senior night. I was like, well, we better show up.
Right. Right.
Or he's going to be really sad.
Right.
But hey, that's all right. It's life's lessons, but it's, it's just those little precious moments. Yeah. Like you said, be there for your kids, right?
Yeah.
Well, Freak Daddy, we've been at it for a while.
Yeah.
I think about time to wrap up.
Good. I can talk.
I know.
Forever.
There's all these things I wanted to get into, but to another time, right? I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, and I plan to have hundreds of episodes, and I will have repeat episodes.
Absolutely. Be glad to come back and help out in any way.
Yeah.
It'd be fun. This is like playtime right here. This is like the happy place.
Next time you come on, we can go a little bit different style. We've dove into your life, but maybe next time you come on, we'll start experimenting a little bit. Yeah. Just kind of bring back some of the nostalgia of radio, and
that'd be fun.
We'll have some fun with it because we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
All right, my man. So when's the Havoc? When are they back home again?
February 3rd and 4th.
Okay, so they're away right now.
Yeah, they're away. They play the way this weekend, and then come back, and then I think they've got probably like 12 or 13 more games. They'll wrap up like March, April, and go into playoffs, and it's usually they start right as the season's over next week, and
they're second in the SPHL now, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, which is weird. It's like they're second, but they played. They got the 2 games ahead of the other team that's tied for second. So it's kind of like that's the one thing with hockey. Forget about figure out how their math works with game in hand and points and really honestly, like with the minor league hockey, it's like I think there's 12 teams. And I think 8 get in or 10 get in. So, I mean, it's like, just get in. And then
you got to be really bad.
Right. And then they have ways where it's like now, as long as you played at least 5 games with the team, you can come back for your playoff roster. So they may have some guys that have been called up to the ECHL or whatever, and then they get to do their final roster. Well, technically, you could be playing against a team. They're in last place, but the reason they're in last place is because 6 of their dogs got called up to the bigger league. So now they come back, and it's like if they can gel, you're in trouble.
Do you have any shout-outs? Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, like I said, I appreciate you having me on, and like I said, it's humbling to think that people still want to hear stories and things that you got, and like I said, I thoroughly enjoy this kind of stuff, and I think that there's so many stories that are out there that need to be heard. We always hear so many stories that we don't need to hear. So find the good ones and the ones that can touch people and make this whole world a better place. And like I said, celebrate or medicate. We got to figure out how to do either one of those. So hopefully you'll have many guests that'll continue and make this town better.
Well, I appreciate the example you set.
Thank you.
And it's to get involved. Doesn't matter where you're from. Just embrace the town you live in. Make the most of it. And I applaud you for that. And it's been fun to observe Freak Daddy and the things that you do, and now to actually meet you and spend some time with you. And I really look forward to the future.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.